Yun-Chi raises his hand, and the dark clouds above the northern region begin to roil with the fury of a devil emperor's will. 1,000,000 years of silence ends with a single vow, one that will shake the divine regions to their core. Subscribe before the next storm breaks. Region intensified as multiple auras of darkness surged in fury and passion. Gradually, space itself began to tremble, causing the dark clouds overhead to roil in the skies above. Yun-Chi raised his head, watching the dark clouds that were shaken into roiling yet again. He lifted his hands as his devilish voice covered the world. Since this devil master has already inherited both the power and will of a devil emperor, how could I possibly allow this dark land to be bullied and humiliated? If we concede today, it will be the shame of multiple generations. 1,000,000 years is enough. We will make the Eastern Divine Region pay this time. We will let them pay for the humiliation every one of us has suffered for 1,000,000 years. Yun-Chi's words couldn't be disobeyed, but nobody wanted to disobey them anyway. His supreme devilish mandate deeply engraved itself into the souls of every Northern Region profound practitioner. As the supreme devil master of the Northern Divine Region, what he had declared was the Northern Divine Region's official proclamation. This land of darkness that had been sealed and suppressed for 1,000,000 years had at last taken its first real step against fate. While the Northern Divine Region had been silent for those 1,000,000 years, the world thought that this was their fate. The denizens themselves had also become accustomed and resigned to it as well. Regardless of whether they were qualified to stage a resistance, the mere idea had long been whittled away by the sheer length of their extensive dark history. Yet behind that silence was a backlog of pent-up feelings. If hope and opportunity truly appeared before them, then it would only take a small spark to incite their fury and set their blood aflame. When the smothered anger and hatred accumulated throughout every passing generation was finally introduced to the breaking of their shackles, and the hope of reversing their fate, the eruption of battle lust triggered afterwards would be unimaginable. This very day, this very moment, each word said by the Devil Master's world-encompassing devilish voice would be firmly engraved into the Northern Divine Region's history. As for the Northern Divine Region's countless dark, profound practitioners, they had become both witnesses and participants to a part of that history. The Northern Divine Region's widespread projections had disappeared, but they left behind many with frenzied boiling blood who wished to fight right away, and that fervor lasted for a long time. They all charged into their sects, clans, and households. Facing the possibility of going against fate, personal grudges and factional hostilities were no longer important. Even death had become something that could no longer induce fear. If they were able to alter the Northern Divine Region's 1,000,000-year-old fate with their blood as the sacrifice, there was no doubt that such glory would forever pass on to the later generations. In the soul-stealing sacred region, the various star realms had all quickly dispersed. The 3 king realms lead the upper star realms, causing the upper star realms to lead the middle star realms, and the middle star realms the lower. Led by their own realm king sect, all Northern Region profound practitioners who wished to participate in the battle to reverse their fate were gathering in a momentous fashion and shifting southward. The speed at which they mobilized was inconceivable. They had not forgotten their huge advantage, however. Their escape route was solid. If one was not a dark, profound practitioner, they would not be able to enter the depths of the Northern Divine Region, nor could they stay for long. No matter the result of this war, they could retreat at any time. The family and children they wished to protect didn't have to worry about getting drawn into this grand war of fate reversal either. Thus, those willing participants had no misgivings and were free of hesitation. Every realm within the Northern Divine Region was swept up in a chaotic maelstrom of profound energy, and the space above them faintly trembled. As their rage persisted, the rising eagerness to fight and their roused determination spread through every inch of the land. Instead of settling down, there was no end in sight to those thoughts as they escalated with each passing second. 1,000,000 years, it had been a whole 1,000,000 years. The eternal darkness was finally descending upon the light, so there was no reason to stay silent anymore. Of the 40,000 star realms in the God realm, the Eastern Divine Region occupies 9,000 of them. Among these 9,000 star realms, there are close to 500 upper star realms. Ignoring the king realms and the huge number of middle star realms, just those upper star realms alone would be a terrible force if they were to band together against a common enemy. The Northern Divine Region shook, as all of its star realms were swiftly gathering their forces. Inside the soul-stealing sacred region, the Northern Divine Region's leaders were making their final arrangements. So our first move has to be quick. It's best to not give the Eastern Divine Region any time to react or even have the chance to detect the danger. Kai Yinger continued. The three strongest upper star realms in the Eastern region are Holy Eves, Glazed Light, and Shrouding Sky. Especially the Holy Eves realm, it has the level 9 Divine Master Luo Guxi, level 8 Divine Master Luo Shangchen, level 7 Divine Master Luo Changsheng, and its sect also has an extremely deep foundation. It is the greatest threat below the King realms. Additionally, the 3 millennia in eternal heaven has directly given the Eastern Divine Region 19 more Divine Masters and more than 700 Divine Sovereigns. HMPH. Those trash didn't bother to move at all during the Crimson Calamity incident, but now they've actually become trouble for us. If we fight them outright, we obviously wouldn't be their match. There was not the slightest hint of worry on Kai Weiao's charming face. Our first step isn't to destroy their forces, but to destroy their faith. What would you do after? Kai Yinger shot her a glance. The same as before? No, Kai Weiao lightly smiled. Just showing a profound imagery stone projection is too slow and much too out of the way. A direct announcement is the simplest and most efficient method. She stretched out a finger and looked at the dim light above her fingertips as her beautiful eyes bent into crescents. The human heart is a thing that is easy to manipulate and sway as long as they see it with their own eyes. Am I right? The darkness in the Northern Divine Region surged, and if the distant star regions were to look over, they would see numerous streaks of dark shadows moving toward what was originally the most empty space, toward the southern realm closest to the other 3 divine regions. Due to the dark barrier and the information lockdown, the Northern Divine Region still seemed as tranquil as before, off the radar. In the Snow Song realm, the Eastern Divine Region's northern realm closest to the Northern Divine Region. After the profound beast riot in the south concluded with the Azure Snow Ice Killen fearfully taking the initiative to swear an oath of allegiance, the previously restless profound beasts had also soon become especially well-behaved, no longer daring to show the tiniest hint of unruliness. It seemed like they too had also been frightened off by something. These days, Mu Bingyun would frequently visit the heavenly Netherfrost Lake and talk to her sister about recent events. When she was about to leave, she suddenly heard an incredibly muffled explosion. She turned her head toward its source and her icy pupils slightly contracted. It was unknown when it happened, but the northern skies had become a field of dusk. This darkness also continued to spread, as if it wanted to swallow the entire firmament, and was also accompanied by a stifling dark pressure. A large number of profound practitioners in many of Eastern Divine Region's northernmost star realms were looking northward. The horrifying sight they were seeing in the distant north was a terrifying devilish might. What is that? Could it be the darkness mist released by the Northern Divine Region? Wait, that's a projection? A dim star region slowly emerged inside the dark mist pervading the north. Within that star realm were innumerable flying fragments of a star realm which neatly described that it had recently been destroyed. Eastern Divine Region, Eternal Heaven Realm? A deep, gloomy, and angry voice enveloped the north. This was the voice of Yama Emperor Yan Xianxia, projected by his unparalleled God Emperor might, which instantly pierced through millions of miles. As a king realm of the Eastern region, you've actually used the power of the Great Void Cauldron to destroy 3 innocent star realms in my North region due to a personal grudge. This crime is unforgivable. The Eastern region profound practitioners, gazing at the dark northern sky, had all been struck dumb. At this time, the projection changed, and the Great Void Cauldron was seen in the dark star region. There was a brief period of dead silence until the profound practitioners woke up from their reverie and took out their various profound imagery stones to record the voice and projection that came from the Northern Devil region. My Northern region has always been willing to stay within the darkness since time immemorial, but do you all really think that you can bully us however you like? The projection changed yet again. This time, it displayed the father and son duo that had stepped into the Northern Divine Region. However, when this scene flashed by, it did not reveal the reason why Zhou Zhuzi brought Zhou Qingchen there. Even so, just the fact that the Eternal Heaven God Emperor had appeared in the Northern Divine Region was enough to cause a huge commotion. When the scene changed once more, what materialized was the fleeing Eternal Heaven God Emperor and Honorable Tai Yu, as well as the poisonous pledge said by the Eternal Heaven God Emperor to gather Eternal Heaven. and even the entire God realm to destroy the northern divine region. Each word spouted by that malicious voice overflowed with hatred, making its listeners doubt that it had actually come from the eternal heaven God Emperor. In the eyes of the world, he was the most gentle and refined God Emperor who was as impartial as a saint. Eternal heaven God Emperor Zhou Zuzi, on behalf of my devil master, in the name of the northern region, I order you to kill yourself within 7 days' time to atone for your sins to our northern divine region. Otherwise, with the rage instilled in our northern divine region, we will make your eternal heaven realm, make the entire eastern divine region pay 10,000-fold. When Yan Xianxiao's voice fell, the darkness and devilish might in the northern skies also quickly withdrew. However, the voice and images that had been displayed earlier had left an imprint on countless profound practitioners, shaking their minds for a long time. As the star realms closest to the northern divine region, they would frequently encounter a few devil people escaping the northern divine region for various types of reasons. They would always kill them on sight and feel proud for doing so. In many star realms, the number of devil people one killed was a great feat that one could boast about for a lifetime. But this was the first time they had seen such a vast devil projection from the northern divine region. It told them frightening news that shocked them so hard that they almost trembled from head to toe. Right, huge news. A threat from the northern divine region. What sort of a threat could the northern divine region be? It would at the very least be devil people coming out to give them more padding on their achievements. This news that had been personally seen and heard by the eastern region's northern realms exploded like thunder, as it rapidly made its way throughout the other realms in the eastern region, and had even spread to the western and southern divine regions as well. An enormous ripple fanned out everywhere it traveled. This combined with the previous unbelievable rumor made way for countless growing speculations, heating the entire eastern divine region. Turns out that the eternal heaven God Emperor really did go to the northern divine region, and he really did bring the eternal heaven crown prince there too. The rumors back then were all true. Wind does not blow from an empty cave without reason, and those rumors originated from the north, so I always knew that they couldn't be false. Does this mean that the eternal heaven crown prince really did die in the northern divine region? The eternal heaven crown prince dying from a cultivation backlash. Barely anyone believed such a laughable rumor when it came out. The rumors from before were all true. The huge white cauldron on that projection is indeed the eternal heaven God realm's great void cauldron. The eternal heaven crown prince must have died in the northern divine region. It's why the eternal heaven God realm used the great void cauldron's spatial divine powers to consecutively destroy 3 of the northern region's dark star realms in a moment of anger. Why the eternal heaven God Emperor entered the northern divine region isn't important. The eternal heaven God realm has always hated those jealous devils, so it absolutely cannot be because of personal greed or being in cahoots with those devils. One cannot live under the same sky as someone who killed their child, and Zhou Qingchen was the only son of the eternal heaven God Emperor's first wife. No matter how refined and mild the eternal heaven God Emperor's personality is, it's impossible for him to forget this debt. His action was within reason. The northern divine region actually has 3 innocent star realms. Ha 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 ha, what a farce. Those devils that should have long been destroyed actually have the cheek to call themselves innocent. If not for the northern divine region's dark yin energy barrier, they would have long since gone extinct. It was destroyed well, as expected of the eternal heaven God realm. Even the northern region's yin energy cannot stop the fury of our eastern region's king realm. They actually want the eternal heaven God Emperor to commit suicide to atone for his sins. Ha 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 ha, this is the funniest joke I've ever heard in my entire life. Ha 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 ha. Hiss. The eternal heaven God Emperor's roar was filled with so much hatred. It looks like the eternal heaven God realm picking a new crown prince so soon really is like what the rumors have been saying. They're making preparations to attack the northern divine region. That group of lowly devil people would immediately be half-crippled the moment they come out of the northern divine region. It's fine if they obediently hide in their nest, but they have the nerve to hoot at the eternal heaven God realm, our eastern divine region. What else could they do? After all, the only thing they can do after being locked in their pathetic cage for an eternity is bark furiously. Not long after, the rumors of the eternal heaven God Emperor using the great void cauldron to enter the northern region, destroying 3 star realms in a fit of rage. and swearing to destroy the northern divine region due to eternal heaven-crowned Prince Zhou Qingchen truly having died in the northern divine region, rapidly spread to every realm within the eastern divine region. Moreover, this was not just a rumor. There were numerous imprints of this projection as proof. Whether it was the great void cauldron, the eternal heaven father and son duo, the destruction of the northern divine region's star realms, or the eternal heaven god emperor's hate-filled words, all of that was clear to see. No one felt the slightest bit of doubt for those rumors. There was amazement, shock, and even excitement, cheers, and countless speculations, but no one paid any heed to the anger and threat contained in that devilish voice which covered the sky. Having been suppressed for 1,000,000 years thus far and slowly decaying to the point where even the weakest profound practitioners of the three divine regions pitied them. How could the northern divine region's threat, that sounded like a dog barking from its cage, deserve to be called a threat? When this explosive news broke out, all of the eastern divine region's various realms were in heated discussion, completely oblivious to the shadow of darkness that was already closing in on them. You were sitting across from one another. Zhou Yuzi's eyes were closed and his expression was calm. But Honorable Tai Yu's face was dark, and simmering anger could be seen in his eyes. What exactly is the northern divine region trying to do? Honorable Tai Yu said in a somber voice. The great void cauldron had fallen in Yun Qi's hands back in the god realm of absolute beginning. It is very likely that they destroyed those three-star realms themselves before framing our eternal heaven. So they mean to? Zhou Yuzi spoke in a low voice. He was calculating the various possibilities. They wanted to use the great void cauldron to frame the eternal heaven god realm, and they were even willing to destroy 3 of their own star realms to accomplish it. Was it to destroy the eternal heaven's reputation? If this had happened in the western or southern divine region, it would certainly be the case. If they were discovered to have destroyed a vast star realm because of their own personal grudges, it would definitely arouse the anger of the god realm against them and harm the eternal heaven's prestige and reputation. But it had happened in the northern divine region. Even if the eternal heaven god realm had acted 1,000 times more viciously, it still would not be seen as a crime. On the contrary, it would be seen as a shining achievement that would be admired through the ages. AI. Zhou Yuzi let out a soft sigh. His old eyes stretched open as he said slowly, I was as cautious and prudent as I could be while preparing for that trip into the northern region. However, I never imagined that I not only fell into the foul trap of Yun Qi and the Devil Queen, but our entire exchange was also being recorded in secret. It looks like I've become more useless with age. No matter how high the grade of a profound imagery stone, it would still send out profound energy vibrations while it was recording images. The stronger a person was, the easier it was to conceal these profound energy vibrations. But Zhou Yuzi was not just any old person. This was the first time his image had ever been recorded without him noticing it. At this point in time, a person from the northern divine region flashed into his mind. It was a witch from the soul-stealing realm, the one whose ability to hide and disguise herself was said to be transcendent. 7th Witch Hua Jin. It was rumored that no one would be able to detect her existence once she hid herself in the darkness. In fact, her ability to conceal herself was so strong that it could be compared to any of the heavenly slaughter star gods who had reached the peak of their powers. Honorable Tai Yu replied, We were in the northern divine region after all. The darkness energy that pervades that region will interfere with our spiritual senses, and they definitely came fully prepared. It isn't strange that my lord did not detect it. I'm worried that they may have recorded far more than this. The eternal heaven god emperor's expression grew solemn. Qingchen has already passed on, but the thing I'm most afraid of is that his transformation into a devil will be revealed to the world. My lord, rumors are flying wildly in the eastern divine region right now. How should we deal with them? Tai Yu asked. Zhou Yuzi shook his head. There's no need to pay any attention to them, because there was no use trying to explain themselves. In fact, there was no way they could even prove their innocence. It was a fact that he had brought Zhou Qingchen into the northern divine region, that he had made a furious vow when he left. It was also undeniable that the great void cauldron had been involved in this incident. It was extremely hard to deny their involvement, because no one would believe that the eternal heaven god realm's great void cauldron would actually fall into Yun Qi's hands. He slowly got to his feet, his broad white robes suddenly flaring up. His god emperor might suddenly erupted from his body as he stood in the center of this sacred hall. On the contrary, I am actually extremely anxious to find out what they are trying to do right now. If Yun Qi is going to force a meeting by threatening us with compromising images of Qingchen, it could not go any better. No one in the Eastern Divine Region had even considered the possibility of the Northern Divine Region crossing the border to attack them, so the God Emperors, who had the best understanding of the state and overall strength of the Northern Divine Region, would never think of it either. While they were helpless to deal with the devils when they were holed up in the Northern Region, they would simply be digging their own graves if they tried to force their way out of those dark lands. Because of this, even when they were faced with these meticulously constructed false charges they could not poke a hole in, the eternal heaven god realm's reaction was exceptionally calm and composed. In fact, they even found these trumped-up charges rather ridiculous. However, no one in the eternal heaven god realm, including Zhou Zuzi himself, would imagine that this pile of shit that had been dumped on their heads would plunge their realm into a terrible nightmare in the near future. Western Divine Region, Dragon God Realm. The Dragon God Realm was incredibly vast. It was not only the strongest king realm in existence, but also the largest star realm in the entire God realm. Every year, countless profound practitioners would make a pilgrimage to this place. The aura in the Dragon God realm was exceptionally primal and dense. It was somewhat similar to the aura of the God realm of absolute beginning. In the heart of the Dragon God realm, the holy land known as the Dragon God region, the aura was at its thickest. Countless profound practitioners would come from very distant lands to visit the Dragon God realm and peer at the vast Dragon God region from a distance. It was not that they did not want to approach this holy land, but that the might coming from the Dragon God region was simply far too dreadful. They did not even dare come within 500 kilometers of these sacred grounds. The dreadful might that belonged solely to the Dragon God region was known as Draconic Aura. The 9 dragon gods, 43 dragon sovereigns, 308 master dragons dwelled there along with the supreme and unmatched dragon monarch. This was the Dragon God realm, the most exalted existence in the 4 divine regions, in the entire primal chaos dimension. A realm that was unrivaled, an existence that could not be shaken. The most important reason for the strength of the king realms was the indestructible legacy of divine power that they passed down through the generations. But the Dragon God realm was not the same. They relied solely on the strength passed down from one's bloodline. They possessed their draconic bodies which stood at the peak of creation. They had extremely long lifespans and a trace amount of divine blood that they had inherited from the primordial dragon gods still flowed in their veins. Thus, even though they did not possess an indestructible inheritance of divine power, the dragons were still a supreme race that could crush all the other races, all the other king realms. The dragon stood supreme among all living creatures. This was a fact undisputed since time immemorial. The draconic aura in the center of the Dragon God region was so dense and thick that it could easily shatter the mind of any other living creature. If a person did not possess a sufficiently strong cultivation or spirit, they would not even be able to crawl through this place, much less walk. At this moment, a large, tall man descended from the sky and slowly began to make his way to the great hall in front of him. He was over 2 meters tall, and he had a head of long, bluish-gray hair. Dull gray scales covered his arms, and a vast world seemed to be hidden within the depths of his twilight blue eyes. When his feet touched the ground, the draconic aura in the surrounding area lost all of its potency. The dragon guards that were standing nearby immediately fell to their knees and said, "We greet the dragon god." The blue-haired man did not utter a single word. He merely continued to stroll forward at a leisurely pace. Long after he left, the dragon guards remained on their knees, hearts trembling with respect and fear. The Azure Dragon God, one of the Dragon God realm's 9 dragon gods. They were transcendent existences, second only to the dragon monarch himself, individuals who were strong enough to treat the god emperors as equals. When he stepped into the great hall, the space in front of him blurred and a man whose back was toward him appeared. In this Dragon God region that was overflowing with matchless draconic aura, the man in front of him radiated no aura at all. He had black hair and wore white robes. Regardless of being 8 feet tall, he looked like a human. The Azure Dragon God fell to his knees. He did not speak, but his twilight blue dragon eyes were filled with reverence. "Azure, you've arrived." The man slowly turned around. His face was extraordinarily handsome, but it also instilled fear in the hearts of anyone who gazed upon it. This was especially true when it came to this man's eyes. They resembled two blazing suns set in a clear blue sky as they glowed with a divine light that seemed to have seen all the vicissitudes of life. The dragon monarch, the azure dragon god, rose to his feet and said, "I heard something interesting while I was on my way back." "Is it concerning the eastern region's eternal heaven god realm?" Longbai calmly asked. "That's right. As expected, my lord dragon monarch already knows about it," the azure dragon god said. "I am a little surprised, though. Given the way the eternal heaven god realm conducts itself, I find it rather ridiculous that they actually did such a dark thing in secret. And they were even caught red-handed, too. But I'm actually more curious about one thing. Why would the eternal heaven god emperor, someone who abhors the darkness, secretly venture into the northern divine region with his son? Could it be that the rumors were true, and that his son was truly transformed into a devil a few years ago?" The dragon monarch glanced at him before speaking. "You didn't cut your expedition in the god realm of absolute beginning short and rush back home just because of trivial things that don't concern our realm, correct?" The divine light in the azure dragon god's eyes dimmed. His voice grew much softer as he said, "I discovered the dragon queen's aura in the god realm of absolute beginning." "What did you say?" Those four words thundered out of the dragon monarch's mouth. In that instant, the draconic aura in the area went berserk, and the azure dragon god's hair flew in the air. Energy waves rippled out, causing the vision of the dragon guards, who were stationed far away from the great hall, to go blurry. Their bodies violently swayed as they very nearly fell unconscious. The azure dragon god's long hair slowly fell to his shoulders, and a deep frown had appeared on his face. He was shocked and puzzled at the intensity of the dragon monarch's reaction. The dragon monarch lost his composure for only that moment. In the next instant, his aura went back to normal and he calmly spoke. "That's impossible. My dragon queen has been secluding herself within the forbidden land of Samsara for the past few years, and she needs to remain in seclusion for at least 1,000 years, perhaps even 10,000 years. How could her aura appear in the god realm of absolute beginning?" Even though the violent change in his mood and the berserk draconic aura had only lasted for a single instant, it was enough to shake the azure dragon god for a long while. He was the dragon monarch. The azure dragon god had known the dragon monarch for more than 200,000 years, but this was the first time he had ever seen him behave in such a manner. And all because he had told him that he had discovered the dragon queen's aura in the god realm of absolute beginning. The azure dragon god did not waste time speaking. Instead, he slowly stretched out his arm. A tiny isolation barrier could be seen floating above his palm. The barrier broke and a clump of grayish-white dirt appeared on top of his palm. Anyone who had been the god realm of absolute beginning would be able to easily tell that this was ancient dirt from that place. Every grain of sand vibrated with its unique primordial aura. However, there were a few traces of light profound energy that was clearly mixed in with this primordial aura. Longbai's dragon eyes began to slowly focus. He had recognized it with a single glance, in the very first instant it had appeared. This was the light profound aura that belonged to Xianxia. He would never ever forget this. He would not be able to forget it even in death. This was the first time he had sensed Xianxia's aura in a few years, what felt to him like the longest years of his life. As the azure dragon god stared at him in increasing astonishment and shock, Longbai slowly raised a hand. Every single one of his fingers trembled as his hand slowly crept toward the ancient dirt which radiated Xianxia's aura. However, he suddenly came back to his senses and retracted his palm with lightning speed. He folded his hands behind his back once more, and his usual calm and composed expression returned to his face. He turned around and spoke in an incredibly composed manner. "Azure, where did you find this?" The azure dragon god suppressed the shock that was reverberating in his soul. He replied calmly, "I discovered this in the southern part of the god realm of absolute beginning, within a part of the ancient forest ruins, the endless petrified forest." "Did anyone else find this?" "No." There was no uncertainty or hesitation in the azure dragon god. The ancient forest ruins is a place that only extraordinary people can reach in the first place. Furthermore, this trace of light profound aura that belongs to the dragon queen wouldn't be recognized by anyone else but my lord dragon monarch and the other dragon gods. After a long period of heavy silence, the dragon monarch finally spoke in a deep and solemn voice. "You are not to reveal this matter to anyone else, even you must wipe your memory of it." "Yes," the azure dragon god replied. This azure has already completely forgotten about it. The shock in his heart was now dozens of times greater than it had been before. Convey this order for me, the dragon monarch continued. I need to go into seclusion for a few months or maybe even a few years. Before I choose to come out of seclusion, no one is to disturb me, no matter how momentous the matter. Only the reappearance of a heresy that existed beyond this era, beyond this universe, like the heaven-smiting devil emperor, could be counted as a momentous event to the dragon god realm. Nothing else even came close, because the dragon god realm itself was the sky in this universe, and the dragon monarch was the heaven that existed above it. Yes, this azure will relay your command. The azure dragon god gave a deep bow before resealing the ancient dirt within a barrier. He placed it before the dragon monarch before turning around to leave. He did not utter a single question throughout the entire process. Once he left the great hall, the azure dragon god's eyebrows deeply knit together. He knew that the dragon monarch had lied about going into seclusion. In fact, it was extremely likely that he was about to delve deep into the god realm of absolute beginning. The isolation barrier that the dragon monarch had personally erected outside the forbidden land of Samsara suddenly flashed through his mind. But he did not dare to continue speculating any further. Emperor was the #1 god emperor in the southern divine region. But he was also #1 at something else, something rather unique. He was the god emperor who had the most imperial harem palaces. His imperial harem palaces numbered in the thousands in just the southern sea god realm alone, and they were dotted all over the various regions of the realm. These imperial harem palaces had been built solely for his pleasure. The southern sea western region, in front of the great hall of one of the southern sea god emperor's imperial harem palaces. An elegant and beautiful lady dressed in luxurious robes walked toward the great hall with soft steps. She stopped right in front of the hall and bowed her body forward as she waited in respectful silence. The sounds of many bodies moving rang in her ears, sounds that were punctuated by the southern sea god emperor's wild laughter. The woman did not flinch when she heard those sounds. She had long since grown used to them. It was a commonly known fact in the god realm that the southern sea god emperor considered sex to be as important as his life. Moreover, he himself had never sought to conceal his lust. He even seemed to take pride in it. The woman waited for a very long time before the great doors of the imperial harem palace were violently flung open. Nan Wansheng swaggered out of the hall. His golden robes hung loosely around his shoulders, and his chest was completely exposed. His youthful face was so stunningly handsome that it could dazzle any woman. "What's the matter?" His eyes slanted as he stopped in front of the beautiful lady. It seemed as if he was very cross that she had disturbed his fun, but he also knew that no one would dare to come to look for him here if the matter was not important. The beautiful lady gave a bow as she lifted up both hands. "My king, this concubine suddenly received this message about an hour ago, and I was told that my king must be the one to personally open it. This concubine feared that something momentous had happened, so I did not dare tarry. This concubine deserves to die for disturbing my king's pleasure. I beg my king's forgiveness." A very small soul crystal lay in her spread palms, and it was emitting a dull white light. She was at the peak of the divine sovereign realm, but she could not sense the item that lay in her hands. Furthermore, the level of power radiating from this soul crystal was so high that it caused her heart to skip a beat. As a result, she truly did not dare to wait to present it to him. Nan Wansheng picked up the soul crystal, his already long and narrow eyes slowly turning to slits. This soul crystal could only be read once, so it was not possible for anyone else to even peek into it. Furthermore, a person needed to at least have the cultivation of a level 8 divine master to safely wipe away the power contained within this crystal. Nan Wansheng did not immediately read the contents of the soul crystal. Instead, he stared at the beautiful lady through slitted eyes before letting out a deep chuckle. "You really do deserve death, because you've currently only been able to find a bunch of repulsive hags to service this king." The beautiful lady's head drooped as her entire body started to tremble. This concubine has sinned. However, these were the most beautiful women I could find in the hundreds of realms that surround us, so this concubine is truly. Heh! Nan Wansheng let out a cold laugh. He crooked a finger under the beautiful lady's chin as he slowly raised her head to meet his gaze. He stared straight into her eyes filled with a fear that she sought desperately to smother, as he spoke in a slow and languid voice. "Sigh, what a good-looking face. But too bad, once you compare it to Yinger, it simply looks far too ugly. The beautiful lady bit down on her lower lip as she said, "The only person whose beauty can compare to the Brahma monarch goddess is the dragon queen herself. This concubine is truly far too useless. Then, are you bringing these ugly women to this king every day to feed me shit?" The beautiful lady did not dare to explain herself any further. She replied in a voice filled with shame, "This concubine is simply too useless." He would have regarded these women as first-class beauties in the past, women fit to enter his harem. But ever since he had laid eyes on the Brahma monarch goddess, he couldn't find a single acceptable-looking woman among the countless women that surrounded him. This was amplified by the fact that he had pursued Xianxia Yinger for years, and had practically bent over backwards to fulfill her every request, but had yet to be given an opportunity to even spend some time with her. His heart yearned for her, it was a maddening itch he couldn't scratch, yet it just inflamed his passion for her more. He was even becoming more and more violent and ill-tempered toward the women who served him, women whom he used to treat with tender, loving care. "Since you already know that you're incompetent, are you actually waiting for me to kick you out?" Nan Wansheng tapped the air with a finger as he roughly shoved the beautiful lady a very far distance away. "If you bring such trash to me next time, you can leave forever." Sorrow flashed across the beautiful lady's face. She gave him a deep bow before she swiftly left. Nan Wansheng held up the soul crystal and gave it a light squeeze. The message contained within the soul crystal instantly appeared inside his soul sea. His eyes slowly started to widen as a strange light began to burn in the depths of Nan Wansheng's eyes with incredible intensity. To think that they actually want to use this king to block a spear heading their way. His lips curled up with dark glee. "However, this king will definitely let them use me. After all, who can resist the allure of eternal life?" 7 days were really too short. Before the red-hot gossip regarding the eternal heaven god realms, huge news had even begun to die down, and outrageous ideas were still percolating in the heads of countless Eastern Divine Region profound practitioners. The deadline for the eternal heaven god emperor to commit suicide to atone for his sins had already passed, but no one paid any mind to it. A rabid dog would strike fear into anyone's heart, but no one would truly pay any attention to one in a cage, no matter how fierce it looked, no matter how loudly it barked. Besides, this was a dog that had been trapped in its cage for 1,000,000 years. No one knew that a sea of pitch-black shadows was slowly creeping towards the southern border like dark clouds, gathering to blot out the sun. The skies above the northern divine region were getting darker and darker with each passing day. In a low-level and resource-starved lower star realm on the northern divine region's southern border. When the Devil Master and Devil Queen personally visited his realm, the realm king of this small star realm could not even breathe without trembling. Yunqi, Kaiwao, and Xianxia Yinger hovered high in the clouds as they stared southward. Their gazes pierced the black clouds and stared into the eastern divine region. 7 days had passed. A black mass thronged below them. In fact, they were completely surrounded by this black horde. The number of dark, profound practitioners who had been willing to step out of the northern divine region and stake their lives on its revival had far exceeded Yun Qi's expectations. No, it had far exceeded all of their expectations. No matter how dreadful Yun Qi's devilish might was, he had only been crowned emperor a year ago, so it was unbelievable that he could rally so many people by his words alone. However, the hatred and battle lust of the northern divine region, who had been oppressed for 1,000,000 years, were undoubtedly the easiest to stoke among the 4 divine regions. This was the only other advantage that the northern divine region possessed in addition to their escape route. "The day has finally come," Kaiwao said in a soft voice as she stared into the distance. No matter what the outcome, no matter what the future held, this would definitely be a day that would go down in the history of the northern divine region, of the entire god realm itself. If they succeeded, they would not only change the fate of the northern divine region, the destiny and structure of the entire god realm would be flipped on its head. All of this had occurred because of Yun Qi. Without him, even if the size and the strength of the northern divine region was multiplied several-fold, they would still never be able to take this step. However, his goal had never been the well-being of the northern divine region. It had always been about achieving his own petty vengeance. On the contrary, everything in the northern divine region had been nothing more than a tool to him. At this time, Tianguhu swiftly flew toward the trio. He stopped in front of Yun Qi before saying, "Your Magnificence, the time has arrived." When he finished speaking, he raised his head to look at Yun Qi. A battle lust that was practically bursting out at the seams simmered beneath his calm exterior. "Have you made your preparations?" Yun Qi said in a low voice as he stared at Tian Guhu. "Your magnificence." Tian Guhu's eyes were as deep as an abyss, and his words were steely and resolute. "Tian Guhu has been preparing for this moment for his entire life." "Good." Yun Qi gave a slow nod of his head. His body blurred, and he instantly appeared at the head of the dark, devilish horde. "Let's be off." Those three calmly spoken words were the order that the Devil Master gave to begin the Northern Divine Region's war of vengeance and rebellion against their fates. Use your rage, hatred, and desire to paint those filthy and wretched lands with darkness and fresh blood. This period of hibernation, that has lasted for 1,000,000 years, is finally over. Now it is time for you to open up a new chapter in our dark history. Rumble! Earth-shaking shouts filled the air like crashing peals of thunder as an immeasurable amount of dark, profound energy was released into the air all at once. Blood and battlelust churned in the veins of this dark horde as the Northern Divine Region began the first act of their vengeance. "Men who have been holed up in the darkness," Tian Guhu roared in an impassioned voice as he stood at the forefront of this dark horde. "Every single one of you make up the vanguard, which will be the first to break out of this wretched prison. For the glory of our descendants, in order to avenge the humiliation of our ancestors, become the sharp sword of vengeance." ONWARDS. The darkness, which had lain dormant for a long period of time, finally erupted. In the distant horizon, 10 pitch-black devilish shadows transformed into dark blades which bled boundless malice as they tore through the borders of the Northern Divine Region. These shadows were led by 100 Northern Region heavenly sovereigns, and the rest of the shadows were formed by 10 million dark, profound practitioners. They had broken free of the cage they had never dared to step out of, and they rushed toward the nearby Eastern Divine Region with violent intensity. The usual calm reigned over the Eastern Divine Region, so this tidal wave of darkness sprang upon them with nightmarish suddenness. It had caught them with their pants down, even though Xianxia had given them ample warning 7 days ago. Kai Waiao and Kaianai Yinger were hovering in the clouds far above the border of the Northern Divine Region. As they bore witness to the first step, the Northern Divine Region took out of its cage, even though this was only a very small step. "We have 10 divisions, and each division is made up of 1,000,000 dark, profound practitioners and led by 10 heavenly sovereigns. They have each been assigned to conquer one star realm," Kaianai Yinger muttered under her breath. "Why don't we use the heavenly sovereigns to conquer the heart of these star realms first, before we send our devil troops after them to hold and pacify the territory? If we do it in this current manner, we will definitely suffer heavy losses." Kai Waiao gave a soft and dry chuckle. She said, "The easier it is to agitate an emotion, the easier it is for it to die down. So what do you think will continue to fuel the rage and the lust for battle that currently burns in the hearts of the Northern Divine Region's profound practitioners?" Kaianai Yinger. "Sacrifice and death." Kai Waiao said those cruel words with a small, alluring smile. "Heh, I got it." Kaianai Yinger laughed coldly as well. "You truly are worthy of being Yun Qi's former master, a senior who easily gains the respect of others. Senior, his master was Mu Xuanian. I happen to be his empress. As for you," Kai Waiao calmly turned her bewitching eyes toward her as she spoke in a languid voice, "you need to call me Big Sister. Don't get it wrong again, okay? HMPH?" Kaianai Yinger's nostrils flared slightly as she gave a soft snort. Devilish eyes that rippled with bewitching allure turned towards the south. Kai Waiao stared at those 10 devilish blades of darkness which were streaking toward the Eastern Divine Region as she muttered, "How will the eternal heaven god realm respond? This queen really can't wait to see it. Speaking of which, have you thought of any other dangerous variables that might put our plan at risk?" Kaianai Yinger had told Kai Waiao that there were 2 major variables that might endanger them on this first stage of battle. The first was the eternal heaven pearl. As one of the heavenly profound treasures, there was no one else besides the eternal heaven god realm that knew its true power or all of its secrets. The unknown was always the most dangerous obstacle. This was especially important since the Brahma monarch god realm had always suspected that the founding ancestor of the eternal heaven god realm had never truly died. The second was Moon God Emperor Xia Qingyu. She was the only woman who had ever left a dark and heavy shadow on Kaianai Yinger's heart. It was her incredibly frightening instincts and cunning which gave Kaianai Yinger pause, which unsettled her heart. The other thing that worried Kai and Yinger was her understanding of Yun Qi. After all, they had known each other since they were 16 years old. She had once been the person that Yun Qi was closest to, that he trusted the most. In fact, she had even been a person that he used to rely on. I haven't, Kai and Yinger said. We need to be careful of the eternal heaven pearl and Xia Qingyu. As for the rest, cold light flashed through her brain as a thought suddenly occurred to Kai and Yinger, causing her to frown. But after that, she shuddered as her body went cold. What's wrong? Kai and Yinger's sudden change caused Kai Waiao's crescent brows to arch. I actually forgot about one terribly dreadful variable, Kai and Yinger muttered as she stared into the distance. Kai Waiao turned around, her expression turning incredibly serious as she asked, What is it? Kai and Yinger did not reply immediately. Instead, she spoke in a low tone. You weren't there when we sent the heavenly smiting devil emperor off at the border of the primal chaos, so you probably don't know who truly forced the darkness out of Yun Qi and pushed him into such desperate straits. Kai Waiao. It was the dragon monarch. Kai and Yinger's gaze turned gloomy as she continued on. Zhou Zuzi had blasted the evil infant out of the primal chaos right before the Crimson Rift was sealed. Yun Qi was furious with Zhou Zuzi, but the Southern Sea God Emperor and Kaianai Fanchen opposed him. Even so, that alone would not have driven Yun Qi to desperation. After all, Yun Qi had just saved the universe, and everyone owed him their lives. The exalted and esteemed dragon monarch had also always held Yun Qi in high regards, and he had even wanted to take him as his foster son back when they first met. It was also the dragon god realm who took Yun Qi in and saved him when he was under my Brahma soul death-wishing mark. All he had to do was stand up and speak for Yun Qi, and everything would have been resolved. However, not only did the dragon monarch not speak up for Yun Qi, he reproached him instead. He pressured everyone who was present at the time, and he pressed Yun Qi in a manner that was even more merciless than the Southern Sea God Emperor and Kaianai Fanchen. Since the dragon monarch, their leader and the #1 God Emperor of the 3 divine regions, had chosen to stand against Yun Qi, the rest of the God Emperors and Realm Kings had no choice but to take his side. In his fury, Yun Qi touched the eternal calamity imprint left to him by the heaven-smiting devil emperor. Devilish energy gushed from his body, which immediately gave everyone a proper reason to kill him, forcing him into dire straits. Kai and Yinger's golden brows froze. I was very puzzled by the dragon monarch's change in attitude toward Yun Qi, and it remained a mystery to me for the longest time. I believe that everyone who knew of the dragon monarch's admiration for Yun Qi would also be puzzled by his behavior back then. Kai Waiao frowned deeply, but she remained silent. She truly had not been present when Yun Qi's darkness had been exposed at the border of the primal chaos. The one who had dealt a fatal blow to Mu Xuanian had also been the dragon monarch. Now that she thought about it, the viciousness of the dragon monarch's attack directly contradicted his personality. Especially since he was said to be someone who was proud and aloof, who did not deign to involve himself in the petty squabbles of the world. However, once I arrived in the northern divine region, Yun Qi accidentally divulged a secret to me, Kai and Yinger said. He slept with the dragon queen. Kai Waiao's eyebrows twitched violently. What did you say? This man who is worse than any beast is capable of anything, Kai and Yinger spat out. Shock paralyzed her mind for an instant. But Kai Waiao frowned as she suddenly recalled the frivolous question she had asked Yun Qi during their meeting with the eternal heaven god emperor. During the time that Yun Qi had allowed his soul to be seized, Kai Waiao had taken the opportunity to ask him this question. Then, who do you think is the most beautiful woman that you've ever come across? Yun Qi's reply was Xianxia. She hadn't paid much attention to it back then, and she had even teased him about it. After all, the dragon queen and goddess stood at the pinnacle of beauty in this current era. Furthermore, it was not strange for him to have seen the dragon queen's true appearance after she had agreed to let him stay in the forbidden land of Samsara. So his answer was even less surprising. That beast, Kai Waiao's ample chest heaved enchantingly. He even dared to taint a married woman who also happened to be the dragon monarch's wife. The dragon queen whom he is greatly indebted to. She was greatly shocked and a little disappointed too. No, Kai and Yinger replied in a soft voice. I'm afraid this matter isn't as simple as that, because Yun Qi emphasized this point to me repeatedly, and he's even gotten angry over it many times. She is Xianxia, not the dragon queen. Kai Waiao frowned deeply. Even though Yun Qi's lechery is ingrained in his bones and he's a true scoundrel, he is also excessively loyal to his friends. Kai and Yinger, praised him with an expressionless face. Back then, he was indebted to the Dragon Monarch, so if Xianxia was truly the Dragon Monarch's wife, he definitely wouldn't have touched her. Xianxia's heavenly beauty could break down any man's willpower in an instant. It would instantly cause that person to toss any notion of friendship or ethics out the window, however. Xianxia was convinced that the insanely lecherous Xianxia would not be swayed by this, and her belief was not without any basis. Because when she had been Xianxia's slave, he had not touched her at all for Xia Qingyu and Jasmine's sake. Which would also mean, Chu Weiao muttered to herself, Xianxia is not the Dragon Queen. Perhaps those words really are true. Her understanding of Xianxia's nature far surpassed Xianxia's. Indeed, if it was the wife of someone he was indebted to, he would never touch her, no matter what. There was also no way he'd be able to stay so calm when someone mentioned Xianxia. Xianxia said, "At first, all I cared about was mocking Xianxia for being a slut who was pretentiously pure on the outside but lewd and wanton on the inside. But after I angered him so many times, a very amusing possibility began to form in my head. Perhaps this so-called Dragon Queen had never even existed. Instead, this title was only a ridiculous charade the Dragon Monarch used to trick the rest of the world, and even more so himself." Kai Weiao's gaze turned ice cold. She did not find this shocking or ridiculous at all. Instead, she was calculating what sort of dangers lay hidden in their path if all of these things were true. "And you've never verified these things with Xianxia before?" Kai Weiao asked carefully. "I haven't been able to." Xianxia shook her head. "I've asked him many times, but he's never been willing to talk to me about Xianxia. In fact, he'd get angry the very moment I started asking him about it." Kai Weiao muttered something inaudible before continuing. "A dragon is lustful by nature, but the entire world knows that the Dragon Monarch so deeply loves the Dragon Queen that he's never even remained in close proximity with another woman for hundreds of thousands of years, much less stained them. His devotion was a show of his love for her, and the entire world lavished him with praise for it. However, if it has always been Xianxia, and the Dragon Queen has never truly existed in this world, then he's been willing to remain alone for all of these years just for those two empty words. His love for Xianxia can no longer even be described as deep. It has already far surpassed that word, in fact. It's even a little frightening." Kai Weiao's expression grew even more serious. His infatuation with Xianxia is so great that if he discovered that she had been tainted by someone else, and a human junior who was only 30 years of age at that. Kai Weiao did not continue speaking. In fact, she could scarcely even imagine the jealous rage that the Dragon Monarch would feel toward Xianxia if everything was true. But if all of her conjectures were true, then his change of attitude towards Xianxia was nothing strange. Then Kai Weiao suddenly understood why Xianxia had looked so frightened and alarmed just now. "You're worried that the Dragon Monarch might forcefully intervene?" Kai Weiao asked. It was the eternal heaven god realm who provoked the northern divine realm first. The western and southern divine regions had no reason to interfere with the northern divine region's vengeance. They would only sit on the sidelines and gloat at the eastern divine region's plight. They had no reason to worry that the flames of this war would end up burning them too, because the eastern divine region would surely be able to deal with a bunch of devils who broke out of their cage in search of death. Once they had blitzed the eastern divine region and conquered it, it would be far too late for the other two divine regions to react. However, if their conjectures regarding the Dragon Monarch and Xianxia were true, once the Dragon Monarch heard about Xianxia's emergence from the northern divine region, he might. No, he would surely attack. He would not care about the cause or any of the grudges between the divine regions. He would simply attack because of his deep hatred and killing intent toward Xianxia, a hatred and killing intent that possibly transcended all of their imaginations. "That's correct," Xianxia replied in a low tone. She let out a soft sigh and said, "I hope that all of these things are just baseless conjecture. Still, compared to believing that the 200,000-year title of Dragon Queen has never existed, it is much easier to believe that Xianxia was simply a lecherous beast." Xianxia used to have these thoughts every now and then, but she had always been far more interested in mocking Xianxia. After all, she had always derived great pleasure from it. But right now, everyone's minds were focused on this war of vengeance that the northern divine region was orchestrating against the eastern divine region, so no one would even spare a thought in this direction. However, when she was considering the essential factors of the dangers they would face, The conjecture she had made about Xianxia and Yun Qi immediately sprang to mind, causing a chill to run down her spine. No matter what, we have to clarify this matter with Yun Qi immediately. Kai and Yinger was just about to move when Kai Waiao grabbed her by the wrist. There's no need to ask him about this, Kai Waiao said. The shock had disappeared from her face, and her voice was far more composed than it had been earlier. Kai and Yinger. Kai Waiao turned her gaze to look toward Yun Qi, who was a fair distance away from them. She said unhurriedly, "We can only guess at the consequences of Yun Qi's action, but the person in question is well aware of the risk posed by the Dragon Monarch. The one who is least able to tolerate any failure during this war of vengeance is Yun Qi himself. However, he's never said a single thing about such an important variable." Kai and Yinger frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "Either we are overthinking this," Kai Waiao continued, "or, although it was very likely that the Dragon Monarch hated Yun Qi to the core, Yun Qi's hatred toward the Dragon Monarch burned just as bright. If the Dragon Monarch knew that Yun Qi had reappeared in the Eastern Divine Region, it was very likely he'd personally lead his army into battle against Yun Qi. At the same time, Yun Qi, who had officially bared his fangs toward the world, would also be itching to kill the Dragon Monarch as well. No matter what the cost, her phoenix eyes grew hooded as she stared directly at Yun Qi's silent and dark figure. She sighed bitterly and said, "It looks like he kept more secrets from us than even I had expected. Once men grow up, they always find ways to disappoint us." Kai and Yinger. "Since he is so against mentioning Xianxia, then let's not force him to," Kai Waiao said in a calm voice. "However, we need to pay as much attention as we can to the movements of the Dragon God realm." At this moment, a woman slowly emerged from the darkness and bowed to Kai Waiao. "Master, I've completed my mission in the Southern Divine Region." "Did anyone detect your presence?" Kai Waiao asked. Hua Jin hesitated for a split second before replying, "No. The Southern Sea God Emperor has been indulging his lust over the last few days, so it made it much easier for me to move around." "Very good." Kai Waiao gave a faint smile. "You truly are this queen's capable jinner. To be able to enter and return from the Southern Divine Region without a trace in such a short amount of time, only this queen's capable jinner is able to accomplish such a great feat. Speaking of which," she said as she turned her gaze towards Kai and Yinger, "exactly what mysterious secrets were hidden inside that soul crystal?" Kai and Yinger crossed her arms under her chest and replied indifferently, "It's a secret that you'd be better off never knowing. The only thing you need to know is that the so-called #1 God Emperor of the Southern Divine Region has always been a very useful dog. He was a useful dog in the past, is one in the present, and will continue to be one in the future." After she finished speaking, she did not give Kai Waiao a chance to pursue the matter any further. Her body blurred and she reappeared beside Yun Qi, who was very far away. However, she also did not ask him about the matter concerning the Dragon Monarch and Xianxia. Kai Waiao suddenly frowned at this moment as she looked down. "Hua Jin, were you exposed?" Kai Waiao understood her 9 witches far too well. She had very clearly caught Hua Jin's moment of hesitation. Hua Jin lapsed into a deep silence before finally shaking her head. "I don't think I was. However, the moment I drew near to the Southern Sea God Emperor's Imperial Harem Palace, I had this vague sensation that I was being watched for a few seconds." "Oh." However, the soul crystal still ended up in the Southern Sea God Emperor's hands, just as we had planned. His divine sense also had not swept over any areas that I had been hiding in, so perhaps it was just a misperception. Hua Jin had said the word misperception very softly, because Kai Waiao had instilled this in all of her witches. There were 2 things that you could not trust in this world. The first was men and the second was misperception. Kai Waiao muttered something under her breath. Her reply to Hua Jin was short and sweet. "That's fine then, you may leave." Those 10 devil blades of darkness could be seen creeping closer and closer to the Eastern Divine Region from a distance. 100,000 enormous profound warships and millions of profound arcs of all configurations followed closely behind. They covered the entire sky over the borders of the Northern Divine Region, radiating a boundless and heavy aura of darkness. Once the first wave of devil blades shot out of the Northern Divine Region, there was no longer any need to hide. Kai Waiao did not move to stand beside Yun Qi. Instead, she suddenly recalled the sensation she had felt when she met the eternal Heaven God Emperor all those years ago. It had only lasted for an instant, but it felt like she was being spied on. But it was something that she had ended up shrugging off as misperception as well. she remained silent for a very long time. In the northern parts of the eastern region, a dark shadow suddenly appeared in the skies of the 10-star realms nearest to the northern divine region, other than the Snow Song realm. At first glance, it looked like a black hole was starting to slowly expand in the northern skies. What is that? Countless profound practitioners gazed towards the north and were stunned by what they saw. That black hole was gradually drawing nearer and getting bigger. They started to discern many human figures pouring out of that black hole. There were so many of them that it resembled a vast swarm of locusts. Devils! A huge army of dark devil people had appeared, on a scale like they had never seen before. Before the first profound practitioner could even cry out, a dark figure pierced through the clouds and crashed into the ground. A terrifying devilish might that could overturn the skies and the seas radiated from his body. He was the leader of the northern region heavenly sovereigns, the commander-in-chief of these 10 devil blades of darkness, Tianguhu. The devilish might of the Yama devils condensed inside the imperial heaven sword as it was brought down mercilessly. Rumble! Under the devilish might of a late-stage divine master, the middle star realms looked so fragile and weak. He had cracked open this vast star realm with a single blow of his sword, extinguishing countless lives in a single instant. Tianguhu had delivered the first stroke of the northern divine region's vengeance, the first blow to signal the start of their assault. Just based on that single instant of euphoria and release, Tianguhu felt like he no longer had any regrets in life. Children of darkness! He pointed his sword downward and looked at the crowd of terrified, wailing creatures who were trying to flee from his wrath. Burn up your life and your blood, exact as much vengeance as you can. At his orders, the opening scene of a horrible, bloody battle had just begun. Meanwhile, he stared at the south as he went to conquer the core of the star realm by himself, the place where the Realm King's sect was located. The large-scale star realm battles will be somewhat simplified and focused on the conclusion rather than the process. The upcoming chapters will focus more on the main characters' battles, that will be it. Region were covered in snow and ice. As the northern region's devil troops poured into their territory dripping malice, fresh blood soon dyed the snowy landscape in glaring red colors. On the distant horizon, pitch-black devil figures cut open blood-colored chasms in this boundlessly white world. There were 10 devil armies, each numbering 1,000,000 soldiers. But when faced against an enormous star realm, it was really just a small and pitiful number. However, one side had been preparing for this moment. The soldiers of the northern region had transformed themselves into demons filled with rage and resentment. They were willing to lay down their lives for their vengeance. The other side was composed of factions who were all looking to their own benefit. None of the eastern region's profound practitioners had made any preparations, and their forces were weaker and more scattered than loose sand. When the curtain on this bloody war was raised, it soon became a one-sided massacre. Yet that was not the only thing that was happening. The dark armies shot out like dark arrows as they streaked toward the heart of each star realm at an extreme speed. The core of these devilish troops were being personally led by Tianguhu himself. He went at full speed as he sped past vast snowy vistas, leaving a dark storm howling in his wake. Cold Sunflower Celestial Palace was the Realm King sect of the Cold Sunflower Realm. Ever since Snow Song Realm King Muxunian had fallen, Cold Sunflower Celestial Palace had quietly become the #1 sect in the northern part of the eastern divine region. The only obstacle blocking their path to ascendancy was the Snow Song Realm's new Realm King. The new sect master of the divine Snow Phoenix sect had the power of a level 8 divine sovereign, 2 whole levels higher than the Cold Sunflower Realm King. However, with the sole exception of Mu Bingyun, the power of Cold Sunflower Celestial Palace surpassed that of the divine Snow Phoenix sect. On this day, Cold Sunflower Realm King Mu Zuer was calmly meditating inside the Celestial Palace. As she gathered and focused the cold energy in her body, a frantic sound transmission suddenly rang from the icicle she wore around her neck. "Sect Master, our branch sects are being attacked. Devils. We're being attacked by devil people." The Cold Sunflower Realm King slowly opened her eyes as she replied in a cold voice, "If the devils draw near, just kill them. To think you'd be so panicked and flustered while facing mere devils, has all of your cultivation and tempering over the years gone to waste? No, the devils that have come this time irk. Ahhhhhh. The sound of flesh rupturing and a skull being split apart soon followed that miserable wail. The Cold Sunflower Realm King furrowed her brow deeply. Just as she was about to stand up, another branch sect sent her an urgent sound transmission. "Sect Master, devil people are invading," the cold Sunflower Realm King said. "The moment devils leave the northern divine region, they become half-crippled. Just kill them as they come." These devils are extremely terrifying. There are a lot of divine kings and even some divine sovereigns among their numbers. They're ripping into us like madmen. Our grand protection formation collapsed before it could even fully form. "Sect Master, please." Bang. The very last thing she heard was the shattering sound of a sound transmission jade. The cold Sunflower Realm King shot to her feet, a dark haze swiftly covering her heart. At this time, she suddenly sensed something and her head swiveled toward the north. A pitch-black figure was streaking in from the north, and he was radiating a terrifying oppressive might that blanketed everything around him. The light suddenly went dim. At that moment, everyone in cold Sunflower Celestial Palace, including the cold Sunflower Realm King, felt like they had been shoved into a deep abyss. They felt as if everything in the world had been swallowed up by a boundless darkness. "Devils are invading!" The cold Sunflower Realm King's heart shook with shock and fear, but she started to yell out orders with incredible composure. "Close the realm, set up the barrier." The vast cold Sunflower Celestial Palace stretched over 5,000 kilometers long, and their disciples numbered in the tens of millions. Tianguhu came to a stop in the air high above them as he looked down on them. In order to survive in the shrinking northern divine region, Middle Star realms always had to be prepared for cruel fights or pillaging. Yet this Middle Star realm sect could quietly luxuriate in this vast, snowy region, could hunt down and exterminate dark, profound practitioners without even blinking an eye. His arrival was heralded by the dreadful aura that radiated from his body. It was also this aura that caused cold Sunflower Celestial Palace to swiftly open their sect protection barrier. Countless disciples flew into the air, and dozens of divine kings led them as they rushed into formation. Tianguhu's face twisted slightly, but he did not say anything. Instead, he raised his Imperial Heaven Sword high in the air before slashing down with it. Rumble! That attack split the sect protection barrier that had just been formed in half, along with the vast cold Sunflower Celestial Palace. This display of world-destroying divine might nearly cause the eyeballs of every single cold Sunflower disciple to pop out of their sockets. Their eagerness for battle and desire to protect their territory had instantly been extinguished. Tianguhu's lips moved as he spoke in a deep, almost demonic voice. "Die in the darkness." As he pointed his Imperial Heaven Sword downward, countless streaks of black lights fell shot toward the ground like inky meteors. They easily pierced through cold Sunflower Celestial Palace, which had existed in proud and cold quietude since ancient times, and each of them obliterated thousands of dazed and helpless living beings. The gathered elders of cold Sunflower Celestial Palace were instantly frightened out of their minds. They began to yell, "Run! Hurry up and run!" This was power that only a divine master could display, so even if they combined all of the power within their sect, they would not even be able to put up the slightest resistance. All of cold Sunflower Celestial Palace's divine kings shot into the air as they crazily burned their own blood essence. They hoped that their sacrifice would be able to save the lives of some of their disciples. S-A-Chen-N-N-K. A merciless ripping sound rang out in the air as Tianguhu's body flashed behind them. They had all been instantaneously cut in two, and the great ice formation they were just starting to form collapsed right after. Under the sword of a level 8 divine master, what difference was there between divine kings and blades of grass? He did not even bother to take a single glance back at them. His divine senses were already locking onto the strongest aura among those who were fleeing. In the next instant, his body blurred and appeared somewhere else. Clang! It only took a single blow of his sword to shatter the cold Sunflower Realm King's ice sword. She flew through the air, blood spraying in her wake. Bang! He ran her through with his second attack. The cold Sunflower Realm King's body dissolved within the darkness as it scattered into droplets of blood which flew through the air. Tianguhu's vision grew blurry for an instant. White snow, darkness, the color of blood, all deeply prodded at the most painful scene frozen in the depths of his soul. A girl was quietly lying in the arms of a man. Her robes were tattered and stained with blood, and her aura was as thin as gossamer. This was the most relaxed and at peace she had ever felt in her entire life. She no longer needed to feel fear, to struggle to survive, to live in anxiety. "Big Brother Tian, why, life is already so hard, but everyone is still trying to kill each other. Why must we be caught up in these cruel fights all the time? Is there truly no way that we can break out of this cage if we actually work together? Ching, Tian Guhu hugged the dying girl as he gritted his teeth and sobbed silently. I heard that the sky beyond this region is blue, and the seas are also blue. There we can see lush viridian forests, beautiful and enchanting flowers in strange and wondrous colors. I hate the people there, but I really wanted to see it. Bang. The cold Sunflower Realm King's remains fell to the ground, and the blood droplets that swirled in the air mixed in with his frozen tears. In the next instant, boundless darkness started to mercilessly spread from his body. Kinger, I'm coming to where you are. I'll be there real soon, and I'll see all the sights you wanted to see together with you. As he mumbled those words, he thrust the Imperial Heaven Sword into the ground. The darkness of the Yama Devils surged in, and an endless black light erupted in the vast snow region which stretched 5,000 kilometers long. It mercilessly swallowed up this gigantic sect which had existed for hundreds of thousands of years, and reduced it to ruin. He did not enjoy killing, and he had never committed such a great sin before. However, as he felt countless lives flicker out and die underneath his dark power, his face and his heart remained unmoved. He soared into the sky as he flung out an arm, creating several gigantic crescents of dark energy with the Imperial Heaven Sword. Those energy crescents shot out and destroyed the dozens of profound arcs which were trying to flee the scene of destruction. Boom, a pillar of ruinous energy soared into the sky. The foundation of cold Sunflower Celestial Palace, an ice ley line, was obliterated in a single instant. Tian Guhu raised his head to the sky as he howled. The cold Sunflower Realm King's sect has been destroyed. All who surrender in this star realm will live, branded as captives. All who resist are to be killed without mercy. Miserable wails shook the skies of the cold Sunflower Realm as the pale white snow-covered lands were swiftly dyed the color of blood. Tian Guhu's voice blanketed the entire realm, and the news of cold Sunflower Celestial Palace's destruction mercilessly destroyed the faith and last hopes of countless cold Sunflower profound practitioners. Reports filtered back to the border of the northern region. Reporting to the Devil Master and Devil Queen, the cold Sunflower Realm King and her sect have been wiped out. The first foothold has been established. As for the remaining 9 star realms, the 6 lower star realms were easily taken, and our forces have already penetrated the heart of the 3 other middle star realms. We will be able to conquer all 3 realms within the next 10 hours. When the news was conveyed to the rest of the dark, profound practitioners, their hearts were set aflame. With the northern region heavenly sovereigns as their leaders, the 10 million young dark, profound practitioners had formed the vanguard of their invasion force. Kai Weiao had not done this to probe the strength of their enemies. She had done this to allay some of the apprehension and fear that still existed in the hearts of the northern region's profound practitioners. A million years of hiding in this dark hole had caused the fear of the eastern divine region to be ingrained in their bones. The older a northern region profound practitioner was, the more profound their fear. After all, unlike the young profound practitioners, it was not so easy to get their blood boiling. But the vanguard, whose strength was actually rather weak as Tian Guhu was the only divine master among them, had cut through their targets like a knife through hot butter. In less than a day, they had won all their battles. As they stared at the truth unfolding in front of them, the northern region's profound practitioners were beginning to understand that the eastern divine region was not that frightening. Now that the Devil Master had descended upon their northern divine region, they had become far stronger than they had even imagined. Very good. Kai Weiao stared into the distant southern skies. She raised a jade hand wreathed in black mist as she pronounced the dark command that would push the eastern divine region into an even deeper nightmare. The 100 realms in the Western Territory. Use the first one as a foothold and press them from all sides. Remember, no one is to go near the Snow Song realm or attack any upper star realm. The moment you enter the realm, press them on all sides and take the heart of their realm. None of you are to show the slightest bit of negligence or mercy. Kill all those who resist and bind those who surrender with darkness so we can use them as hostages. Kai Weiao's lips curved up in a cold and merciless smile. Doesn't the Eastern Divine Region keep prattling on about their morals? Then we'll use these people as hostages and use their morals as shackles. RUMMMBLE. Thousands of bolts of lightning lit up the northern region's skies. 100 dark, profound warships that stretched longer than 50 kilometers surged past the border, along with hundreds of thousands of dark, profound arcs. They left a sun-blotting darkness in their wake as they swarmed toward the western territories of the eastern divine region. Now that those 10 penetrating arrows had landed, it was time for the true darkness to engulf the world. Kai Waya waved an arm, and a projection spread out in front of her. A map of the entire eastern divine region was displayed on that screen. All 9,000 of its star realms were accurately mapped out there. The king realms, upper star realms, middle star realms, and lower star realms were highlighted in different colors, so it was easy to tell which was which. There were a few spots on the map which were glowing with a strange black light. There were about 100 of these dots of black light. The positions of these black dots had been decided by both her and Xianxia Yinger. After all, her consciousness had dwelled within Mu Xunian for 10,000 years, so she had spent most of her time in the Snow Song realm. As a result, Xianxia Yinger's knowledge of the entire eastern divine region and her knowledge of where the important hubs far exceeded her own. Kai Waya swiftly scanned the map. Finally, her gaze fell on a dot of light on the right side of the map and remained fixed on it. "What? Are you still worried?" Xianxia Yinger's voice rang in her ears. Kai Waya stretched out a hand as she said, "These 3 footholds are much too close to the Holy Eve's realm. The Holy Eve's realm has 3 great threats, Luo Guxi, Luo Xianxian, and Luo Changsheng, and the sect is also incredibly strong and potent. It will be easy to use our blitzkrieg assault to take these 3 footholds, but if the Holy Eve's realm decides to contest our presence, then we will have to split off some of our king realms to deal with them." Kai Waya turned to look at Xianxia Yinger. "Are you still unwilling to say it at this point? This queen's chest is currently trembling mightily due to the worry that I am feeling." Kai Waya's words caused Xianxia Yinger to glance at her chest unconsciously. Those full luscious globes, which stuck out without any effort, formed a captivating arc as they rose and fell with Kai Waya's breathing. Xianxia Yinger immediately averted her eyes as she clenched her teeth. "There is a huge landmine buried in the Holy Eve's realm." Xianxia Yinger spat out. She was well aware that Kai Waya was provoking her, so she had no choice but to tell her in order to recover some lost ground. "As long as we set off this landmine, the Holy Eve's realm will descend into internal chaos." "Oh!" An interested look appeared on Kai Waya's face. Xianxia Yinger stretched out her white hand. She held a soul crystal that she had prepared a long time ago between her fingers. "When you think the time is ripe, make sure that this falls into the hands of Holy Eve's realm, King Luo Xianxian. Once you do that, you'll just need to sit back and watch the spectacular show that the Holy Eve's realm is going to put on for us." Kai Waya reached out to take the soul crystal and swept her divine senses over it. Her lips instantly pursed up into a small smile that was alluring enough to enchant most people. The worry and anxiety she had previously felt had disappeared into the ether. "You even managed to dig up such sensitive information on the Holy Eve's realm. You truly do live up to your name as the Brahma monarch goddess who was universally feared by the king realms." "Heh!" Xianxia Yinger gave a cold chuckle. "I also never imagined that all of the sensitive information that I worked so hard to dig up over the years would end up being a wedding dress for your northern divine region." "Oh, no," Kai Waya said as her smile grew even more bewitching. She whispered in that sultry voice of hers, "I think you're mistaken about something. This isn't a wedding dress you made for the northern divine region. It's one you made for Yun Qi, my adorable little hatchling." Xianxia Yinger, "At number percent." By the time the news that the devils of the northern region had attacked star realms started to spread, an even more dreadful calamity was already engulfing the northern territories of the eastern divine region. The heavens grew dark as thunder and lightning roiled in the sky. Large fleets of dark, profound arcs arrived in the skies of one star realm after another, and dark devils started swarming out of them. Devils poured down from the sky like an apocalyptic deluge. As this darkness, dread, and malice descended, it cut through the bodies and defenses of the eastern region's profound practitioners like cruelly edged knives. Kai Waya's strategy was exceedingly simple and violent. They would use forces from their middle star realms to suppress lower star realms, and the forces from their upper star realms to suppress middle star realms. After that, they would use all of the living beings in these middle and lower star realms as hostages to pressure and restrict the upper star realms. They would avoid clashing with the upper star realms altogether. Despicable, shameless, cruel, inhumane, weren't these the very labels that other 3 divine regions had slapped on the northern divine region? If that was the case, they would live up to their expectations. Every dark, profound arc was directly descending upon the realm king sect of a star realm. Once they destroyed the core of a realm, it was easy to get the rest of the realm to surrender. Thus, incredibly violent battles simultaneously broke out in over 100 star realms in the northern territories of the eastern region. Countless dark, profound arcs continued to fly deeper into the eastern divine region, even as these battles raged on. It seemed as if there was no end to them, and it caused those already terrified eastern region profound practitioners who were already engaged in battle to shudder in fear. A nightmare had suddenly descended on them on this day. The land they were so familiar with had now turned into a viscous sea of blood. Their comrades, which they had just been laughing together with a moment ago, were now corpses strewn across the plains. As the darkness continued to spread, lives all around them were snuffed out as profound formations collapsed and entire sects were destroyed. Their struggles grew more and more powerless until only boundless despair was left to them. More and more people sank to their knees in despair. They knelt before the devils they used to despise and detest as they allowed themselves to be sealed into dark cages. They might lose all of their honor and dignity by surrendering to these devil people, but at least they would still have their lives. The devils who had suddenly poured into their world were different from the devils they normally knew. They were completely different. In the past, any devils that they met became easily slaughtered prey. This was the first time they realized just how terrifying these devils clad in darkness profound energy were. Gigantic sects which had existed for dozens of millennia were being leveled by these devils in the span of hours. Clans which had 100 generations worth of foundation had been completely destroyed. Gradually, the core of their star realms had been trampled and seized by the darkness. As these realm king sects were being destroyed, gloomy darkness started to pervade the skies. Those profound practitioners who had come to reinforce them stopped in their tracks before turning around and fleeing back to their homes. Some of them even uprooted their entire clans and sects and fled their homes altogether. In a single day, in the shockingly short span of 24 hours, nearly 200 star realms in the eastern divine region's northern territories had fallen. However, these 24 hours were merely the beginning. The eastern divine region had never dreamed that the northern divine region would actually invade them in earnest. Because they had never had to guard against the northern divine region, they never needed to worry that their homes would be threatened by that place. Now that these devils had been unshackled, they were free to vent 1,000,000 years of rage, hatred, and battle lust. When faced with such demons of war, the eastern divine region now knew exactly how terrifying they were. In the cold sunflower realm, Tianguhu stepped out of the ruins of cold sunflower celestial palace. There were groups of eastern region profound practitioners bound in darkness all around him. More and more of them were surrendering, and soon the number of captured profound practitioners stretched to the horizon. Tianguhu shifted his gaze from the people below him as he looked to the south. At this time, a gigantic profound warship was speeding towards them from the south, leaving incredibly vast energy waves pulsating in its wake. This profound warship was radiating the terrible might that belonged to an upper star realm. The profound warship stopped in midair, and a higher realm king dressed in blue robes stepped out of it. The earth-shaking oppressive might of a divine master surged out from his body. The scattered star realm king, Luo Chuanian, 1,000,000 powerful profound practitioners flooded out of the warship as they swiftly formed up into a battle formation behind him. The scattered star realm was the closest upper star realm to the cold sunflower realm, so their arrival could only be expected. As Luo Chuanian haughtily stared down at the lands below him, his brow creased deeply. The auras of the devils he saw were far stronger than the devils he had come in contact with. They had clearly emerged from the darkness, but they did not show any signs of weaknesses. Furthermore, the hatred in their eyes and the malice that oozed from their bodies greatly astonished him. And the moment his spiritual sense swept over Tianguhu, the pupils in his eyes fiercely contracted. "Scattered Star Realm King, we've been waiting for you for a long time." Tianguhu's hands were folded behind his back, and he made no move to draw his sword. "However, I would strongly encourage you not to attack, otherwise." He pointed at the hostages imprisoned in prisons of darkness below him. "This ocean of blood will be on your hands." "Heh!" The Scattered Star Realm King gave a cold laugh. To think that a mere devil would dare to behave so arrogantly in front of this king. Profound energy erupted from his body as he took a single step forward. But it was when he took this step forward that he saw a sinister smile flash across Tianguhu's face. Boom! Darkness exploded, and a blood-colored hole appeared in the sea of people below him. Several 100,000 people had been completely obliterated. You! Luo Chunian's body went rigid as the expression on his face dramatically changed. To a higher realm king, the lives of mortals were as cheap as grass. If one counted the amount of people Luo Chunian had personally killed in open and in secret, it far exceeded the amount of people who had just died. However, right now, it was a conflict between the Eastern Divine Region and Northern Divine Region, a conflict between the righteous and the devil people. So he would undoubtedly be held responsible for all these lives, which had just been lost because of that single step he had taken, and he might never be able to absolve himself of it. Miserable wails of fear and terror rang out across a vast stretch of bloody, snow-covered land, causing the scalps of the scattered star realm's profound practitioners to go numb. Wail and cry to your heart's content. If you want to blame someone, blame the eternal heaven god realm. There was no reluctance or pity in Tian Guhu's eyes. On the contrary, they seemed to be filled with a twisted joy. We were willing to be caged up in the northern divine region, but the eternal heaven god realm still wanted to destroy our star realms and push us to the brink of extinction. Since they want to shove our backs against the wall, then they had better not complain when we retaliate. He slowly raised his head to look at the scattered star realm king. Are you sure you want to bear the blood of this star realm on behalf of the eternal heaven god emperor? As he looked at the boundless sea of people below him, the scattered star realm king's hands started to shake. Tian Guhu's words had given him a clear reminder that it was the eternal heaven god realm who had selfishly provoked the northern divine region first. That everything that was happening in front of him was the fault of the eternal heaven god realm. Since that was the case, the eternal heaven god realm would definitely take action. In fact, they had to take action. It was only right for them to do so. These devils who were hellbent on revenge clearly had no intention of attacking any of the upper star realms, so why did they have to take responsibility on behalf of the eternal heaven god realm? The desire to retreat sprang up in his heart, but since he had already come here, he would lose a great amount of dignity and honor if he simply retreated like this. At this moment, his sound transmission jade suddenly rang violently. After that, a panicked voice rang in his mind. Sect Master, devils are invading. They've already reached our capital. The barrier protecting our city is under attack. Please return and reinforce us. Great shock instantly seized the scattered Star Realm King's heart. He saw a cold smile form on Tian Guhu's face. We are only doing this to force the eternal heaven god realm to atone for their sins. If we were merely venting our hatred, we would have massacred these people a long time ago. As long as the upper star realm sects obediently stay at home, we won't come and bother you either. However, if any of you want to sacrifice yourselves for the eternal heaven god realm, don't blame us for wiping you off the face of the earth. The scattered star realm king's expression went through a series of changes. He withdrew all of his aura into his body and spoke in a low voice. Order your people to retreat from the scattered star realm, and I promise you, as the scattered star realm King Luo Chuanian, that we will immediately retreat and not interfere with you. Humans were selfish by nature, especially when the responsibility so clearly belonged to someone else. The scattered Star Realm King's current stance was exactly what Kai Weiao and Kaianai Yinger had predicted it would be. If they shared a common foe, they would rally together and fight to the bitter end. But if the eternal heaven had caused this trouble, then the eternal heaven should bear the brunt of the consequences. If they could preserve their lives and their realms by staying out of this conflict, why should they sacrifice themselves for no good reason? Very good, a wise decision, Tian Guhu said as he gave a soft chuckle. After that, his smile froze on his face and his voice suddenly turned low and deep. What did you just say your name was? The scattered Star Realm King's eyebrows knit together in puzzlement before he replied in a proud voice. The scattered Star Realm King, Luo Chuanian. Heh! Tian Guhu smiled once more, but his voice was now as dark and deep as an abyss. Such a disrespectful name. It's better if it was wiped off the face of this earth. Bzzz. The Imperial Heaven Sword was unsheathed, and his Yama Devil power flared out of his body. His strength, that of a level 8 Divine Master, caused the faces of everyone from the scattered Star Realm to go white, and this included Luo Chuanian. You! Luo Chuanian's heart and eyes were shaking in fear. When he had arrived, he had sensed the aura of a Divine Master from Tian Guhu's body. Even though he had been shocked by it, he had still remained proud and haughty. But right now, he found it difficult to even breathe. The terrifying devilish might that threatened to break apart his body told him that this young man in front of him was at least half a realm stronger than him. It was very likely that he was a late-stage divine master, the ones who stood at the very pinnacle of this era's profound way. Every step taken in the divine master realm was like ascending to a new heaven, so at least 6 heavens existed between him, a level 2 divine master, and Tian Guhu. If he had gone to any of the other star realms controlled by an upper star realm of the northern region, he could have left completely unscathed. However, he just had to go to the cold sunflower realm, and he had even haplessly offered up his innocent name. "Run, run," Luo Chunian roared once he was engulfed by that soul-penetrating killing intent. He abandoned his profound worship as he turned around to flee. However, fangs of darkness closed in on him from behind and mercilessly dragged him into the abyss of death. Many similar scenes played out above the skies of the middle and lower star realms conquered by the northern divine region. Thousands of people were being used as hostages to press the morals of these upper star realms, and revenge against the eternal heaven god realm was being offered up as the reason. They would not invade the upper star realms, but if any upper star realm interfered, they would be included in the scope of their vengeance. The northern region's attack would last until the eternal heaven god realm atoned for their sins. As one star realm after another fell to the devils, these rumors swiftly spread throughout the entire eastern divine region. They even reached the western divine region and the southern divine region. The devil people of the northern region really did not attack any upper star realms, but the upper star realms clearly felt the peril of interfering with them. They waited for the eternal heaven god realm to step up and solve this problem. No one was willing to blindly sacrifice themselves or bear any responsibility for the eternal heaven god realm's mistake. Due to the selfishness inherent in every human being, they would tarry. But the longer they tarried, the longer they stayed quiet, the deeper the darkness would thrust in. It was already burrowing into the eastern divine region at an incredibly frightening speed. Furthermore, no one was aware of the secret chess pieces that were quietly being placed on the board amidst this chaos and destruction. Additionally, the praise and admiration that had been heaped on the eternal heaven god realm for destroying 3-star realms of the northern divine region had gradually transformed into resentment, blame, and curses due to the northern divine region's frenzied vengeance. The dark calamity that had suddenly befallen them all. Western divine region, dragon god realm. Lord Ash, we have received some news from our northeastern territories. The devils of the northern divine region have launched a full-scale invasion against the eastern divine region's northern territories. It is rumored that many lower and middle star realms have already been conquered by the devils. This entire affair started because they want to avenge the destruction of 3 of their star realms by the eternal heaven god realm. Hey. A giant figure lay slouched on a gigantic seat. He had long silver-gray hair and a strange face that looked like it was sculpted by a sharp sword. Even the pupils of his eyes were ash-gray. He was one of the 9 dragon gods of the dragon god realm, the Ash Dragon God. He was also the most arrogant and conceited dragon god. He gave a cold laugh before speaking in a mocking voice. We should have just allowed those pitiful devils to slowly die in that cage of theirs. But those idiots in the eastern divine region just had to go provoke them. Haven't they heard that a dog will jump over a wall if it's desperate? Lord Ash, do we help them suppress the devils? Help. Suppress, the Ash Dragon God said with a bored look on his face. Have those devils stepped into the western divine region? No, they have not. Your subject has paid careful attention to them, and they are very far from the borders of the western divine region. Forgive me, but they don't have the guts to come near our western divine region either. Then, why should we do anything? Since when has it been our responsibility to clean up after the eastern divine region every time they do something stupid? The Ash Dragon God looked to the side. Since this is a mess they made, they should clean it up themselves. However, the Ash Dragon God's eyes narrowed. We still need to inform the Dragon Monarch about this. There's no need for that. A deep and indifferent voice rang out in the air as the Azure Dragon God slowly walked inside and said, The Dragon Monarch has gone into seclusion recently, and he will be in seclusion for at least several months. He said to tell all of you that he is not to be disturbed, no matter what happens, much less for a small external matter like this. Seclusion? The Ash Dragon God looked amused. Why did the Dragon Monarch suddenly have the urge to do this? His cultivation already reached the very limits of this current era 200,000 years ago. What will a few months of cultivation even do? You had better not investigate this matter or ask the dragon monarch about this once he emerges from his seclusion. The azure dragon god warned him before he turned around to leave. As for the northern divine region's sudden grand invasion of the eastern divine region, he barely paid it any attention. What did the dragon god realm have to do with the trouble that the eternal heaven god emperor had stirred up? All of the devils in the northern divine region would definitely be exterminated during this war, while the eastern divine region would also suffer heavy losses. As a dragon god of the western divine region, he would happily enjoy this conclusion where the western divine region could both have its cake and eat it too. Region like an audible plague. The eastern divine region had become far too used to peace. This, coupled with their age-old contempt for the northern divine region, had made the profound practitioners of the eastern divine region complacent. The words "drowning in disaster" had never even crossed their minds once when the northern divine region had launched their sudden invasion. The upper star realms, who should have been at the forefront of this fight, had inevitably decided to save their own skins when they found out that the devils would leave them alone if they did not stick their noses into things. They decided to wait for the eternal heaven god realm, who had instigated everything, to come out and solve this problem. They certainly would not allow themselves to blindly sacrifice themselves for someone else. However, once this dark plague had infiltrated into the heart of the eastern divine region, something which would be happening at an incredibly terrifying speed, they would no longer have enough time to react. Southern divine region, southern sea god realm. After he received the news, the southern sea god emperor slowly stood to his feet as a strange light glittered in his eyes. In the short span of 2 days, the devils of the northern region have occupied over 200 star realms in the eastern divine region. Heh, they're just like a bunch of rabid dogs. The one who had spoken those words was dressed in silver robes, and sinister malice bled from his eyes. His name was Nan Fei Hung, and he was one of the 4 sea kings of the southern sea, the northern hell sea king. However, these star realms are all middle or lower star realms, so they haven't really suffered a great loss. I heard that every star realm that has been captured by these devils was practically drowned in blood. This debt of blood, the northern hell sea king gave a low and mocking laugh as he said, will land squarely on the shoulders of the eternal heaven god realm. Right now, the eternal heaven god realm only needs to take command, marshal the forces of the eastern divine region's upper star realms, and launch a counterattack. Once they do that, slaughtering these devils will only be a matter of time. However, I'm afraid that the reputation of the eternal heaven god realm is going to take a beating as well. When the northern hell sea king finished speaking, he saw that the southern sea god emperor had simply been muttering to himself in a soft voice. He immediately asked, "My king, do you find something odd in this whole affair?" The southern sea god emperor looked up before he gave a deep chuckle. "Follow this king to the eastern divine region." The northern hell sea king's brow immediately furrowed. Could it be that my king desires to help the eastern divine region? Given his understanding of the southern sea god emperor, the one thing he would not do in this situation was to render aid to the eastern divine region. In fact, he would eagerly cheer on the devils in hope that they'd leave the eastern divine region a tattered mess. The southern sea god emperor replied, "The eternal heaven god emperor will want to put an end to these rampaging devils as quickly as possible. He will want to reduce the casualties to a minimum, so it's very likely that he is requesting aid from the Brahma monarch god realm, moon god realm, and star god realm. So this presents to us an opportunity that only appears once in a blue moon." Opportunity? The northern hell sea king grew even more puzzled. He took a step forward and whispered, "Does my king want to? There's no need for further questions." The southern sea god emperor turned his gaze toward the north before his eyebrows suddenly sank. In fact, the timing of this opportunity seems almost too good to be true. He could sense that there was something off about this opportunity, but nothing in this world could ever exceed the allure of eternal life. It's rare for me to ever be willing to be a shield for someone else. A cold smile flashed across the southern sea god emperor's face. But since I'm doing it, I might as well go all out. When he said those words, a murderous light flashed in his eyes. Whether he was willing or not was one thing, but as for the person who dared to use him as a tool, how could he let them off lightly? Eastern Divine Region, Moon God Realm. Yao Yue, Lion Yue, and Jin Yue respectfully bowed in front of a moon-white veil, as they gave the Moon God Emperor reports on the chaos in the northern territories. It had not been long since the devil people had launched their invasion, but they had already conquered 300 star realms. Everyone had been rattled by just how fast their progress had been. The moon god emperor slowly spoke behind the veil. They destroyed their own star realms and framed the eternal heaven god realm. They used this vengeance as an excuse to blitz our middle and lower star realms. After that, they seized all who surrendered as hostages, but did not attack any upper star realms. This caused the upper star realms to blame the instigator of this entire mess, the eternal heaven god realm, and made them unwilling to suffer losses in order to save the middle and lower star realms they already looked down upon. It should have been easy to form a unified front when our enemies are devils, but this front fell apart from the beginning of this entire affair. To be able to so skillfully manipulate the hearts of man, this is probably the work of that devil queen of the northern region. Framed? Yao Yue was confused. But I already confirmed that the cauldron in the image was the great void cauldron. There can be no doubt. Lion Yue, the moon god emperor said. Yes. Lion Yue nodded her head before recounting what had happened to the other two. 2 years ago in the god realm of absolute beginning, I discovered a trace of the great void cauldron's aura where Honorable Tai Yin had fallen. The great void cauldron should have fallen into Yun Qi's hands at about that time. But since the incident in the god realm of absolute beginning also involved Zhou Qingchen, there was no way the eternal heaven god emperor would let the loss of the great void cauldron become known to the public. There's also no way that the world would believe that such an important divine artifact would actually fall into the hands of the northern divine region. To think that such a thing happened. Shock appeared on Yao Yue's face. The scale and ambition of this devil invasion is far more terrifying than you can see right now. The moon god emperor said unhurriedly. It currently looks like they only dare to bully the middle and lower star realms as they claim to wait for the eternal heaven god realm's declaration. But the profound arcs that fled from those conquered star realms are the most terrifying hidden threat. Ah! Lion Yue's delicate brows knit together. Is Master worried that the devils of the northern region will use the profound arcs of those star realms to infiltrate the eastern divine region? That should be exceedingly hard to accomplish. Devils are far too prone to losing control of their auras, so they will be easily exposed. Even if they hide in the depths of these profound arcs, their dark auras will still be easily detected. So how can they accomplish any infiltration on a grand scale? After a brief period of heavy silence, the figure behind the veil spoke in a very soft voice. In the end, the most dangerous and terrifying thing in the world isn't something that is unknown. It's something that transcends all common sense. The three girls looked at each other before Yao Yue said, All of the moon gods and divine envoys have assembled in Divine Moon City. We await your command. Preparations at every level of power have also been completed. Once Master gives the order, we can go and retake the northern territories at any time. The veil raised up, and Xia Qingyu slowly walked out of it. Her figure turned translucent before she appeared very far behind the three girls. This king is going to make a trip to the eternal heaven god realm. No one is to do anything before I return. The moment she stepped out of her imperial palace, she came to a sudden halt. She said, Jin Yue, Shui Meiyan possesses the stainless divine soul, and she is full of tricks. So she may very well be planning to take advantage of this chaos to escape her captivity. You are to personally watch over her during this period of time. Jin Yue was taken aback by that command, but there was no way for her to reject it. She merely replied in a soft voice, Yes. The atmosphere within the eternal heaven god realm had turned unprecedentedly strange. News of devils terrorizing the north was being reported at every hour, and each wave of news was more shocking than the last. Countless pleas for help were chaotically arriving with every wave. The devil people of the northern region had claimed that this invasion was vengeance against the eternal heaven god realm, so the rest of the eastern divine region was waiting for the eternal heaven god realm to respond. It had not even been 2 years since his most beloved son died in the northern divine region. He had even lost the last untamed divine marrow in the eastern divine region. Zhou Yuzi's heart had not healed yet, and he was clearly the biggest victim here. But he had suddenly been framed as the instigator of this devilish plague that had descended upon the eastern divine region. Zhou Yuzi finally understood where all the previous rumors had been coming from and their reason for framing him, something that he had originally been completely unbothered by. The Scarlet Wind Realm has fallen. The Scarlet Wind Realm King is dead, and 70% of his sect has been destroyed. The other 30% surrendered to the devils. My lord, the defenses of both the Celestial Heaven Realm and the Purple Rainbow Realm have been breached. We have already sent multiple stern orders to the 4 nearest upper star realms, but none of them are willing to send reinforcements to support or reconquer those star realms. The 9 Maha Realm has been completely conquered by the devils. My lord, the number of devils that have poured out of the northern divine region is at least 50 times the estimate we made yesterday. It is very likely that we haven't even seen all of their forces yet. Furthermore, we have already confirmed one thing multiple times. The dark, profound powers of these devils show no sign of weakening even after they have entered the eastern divine region. My lord, all of the star realms in the northern territories have descended into complete chaos. Countless profound practitioners and profound arcs are frantically fleeing toward the south even as we speak. The central and southern territories are already starting to descend into panic and chaos. One side had made ample preparations, while the other side was as scattered as a dish of loose sand. One side did not fear death, while the other side valued their own lives greatly. But no one had imagined that the eastern divine region, which had enjoyed peace for too long, would actually react in such an incompetent and disorganized manner now that they were faced with a true crisis. An endless stream of news caused the eternal Heaven God Emperor's face to grow incredibly dark and solemn, but he had not lost any of his composure. Below him, the vast army of eternal heaven had finished their preparations, and there were 6 guardians among them. My lord, we cannot afford to wait any longer, Honorable Tai Yu said. Every breath that passed resulted in the sacrifice of more Eastern region profound practitioners, and this debt of blood. Half of it belonged to the devils of the northern region, and the other half had landed squarely on the shoulders of their eternal heaven god realm. They could not shake this responsibility even if they tried. How many troops have we assembled? Zhou Yuzi asked. Currently, the core forces of 143 upper star realms have been assembled, and all of them are being personally led by their realm kings, Honorable Tai Yu replied. However, something strange has occurred. The Holy Eve's realm stopped responding to our sound transmissions recently. Also, the teleportation profound formation has been prepared, and the power it contains is enough to transfer everyone here to our northern borders 5 times. The Eternal Heaven God realm specialized in spatial powers. Even if they did not have the Great Void Cauldron, they could still build a long-range spatial profound formation which could teleport large numbers of people in a short amount of time. However, they had undoubtedly expended an incredible amount of resources in this undertaking. We really can't wait any longer, Zhou Yuzi muttered under his breath. At this time, his gaze suddenly shifted to the side. A purple figure instantly drew near and appeared beside Zhou Yuzi. She had moved at such a fast speed that it seemed like she had stepped out of a rift in space. Has the Moon God Emperor come to point fingers at this old one as well? Zhou Yuzi asked in a calm voice. Even though the messengers had deliberately concealed them, he did not even need a second thought to know that these stricken star realms, these terrified Eastern region profound practitioners, were definitely cursing and blaming him with language even more venomous than he had imagined, even though these people had just been sincerely praising him and revering him just a few days ago. This was an all-too-normal response, totally human nature. Xianxia gave a dull laugh before saying, "Your eternal heaven lost a great void cauldron and got an extremely large pot in return. This king has hardly even begun to pity you, so why would I come to point fingers at you?" Zhou Yuzi looked slightly moved. After that, he said, "The Moon God Emperor's discerning eyes truly burn as bright as a torch. I'm just not sure how many eyes the Moon God Emperor has within the eternal heaven itself. This doesn't seem to be something that the eternal heaven God Emperor should be concerning himself with right now." It didn't seem like Xianxia had any intention to refute what he had just said. Instead, she turned the tables on him. "Before this all happened, you disdained to prove your innocence, but now it's impossible to prove your innocence even if you want. So you have no choice but to obediently carry this pot on your back." She glanced at the distant grand formation which was radiating a dense spatial energy. Her crescent brows knit together slightly as she said, "More than 100 upper star realm kings and their sects. You truly do live up to your name as the eternal heaven god emperor. Even though you've been labeled as the sinners who have instigated this devilish plague, you can still mobilize such a huge amount of strength within this short period of time. Let this king guess. The coordinates of this new grand teleportation formation you've constructed are. Her crescent brows knit together once more before she whispered. Set at the borders of the eastern region's northern territories. That's right. Zhou Yuzi nodded his head. Xia Qingyu replied. So you are going to teleport such a large force to the rear of the devils before getting forces from the central and southern regions to assault them from the south, trapping them in a pincer movement. Once you have made your move, all of the devils attacking the eastern divine region will be trapped like turtles in a jar. You truly do live up to your reputation. You didn't make a move for several days, but once you do make a move, it's decisive and merciless. It looks like this devilish plague will very soon dissolve into smoke and ashes. This king does not need to add any more worries to my plate. Once she finished speaking, Xia Qingyu turned around as if to leave. Is the moon god realm not going to provide any assistance? The eternal heaven god emperor asked. Xia Qingyu replied, in the eyes of the world, this devilish plague was caused by your eternal heaven god realm, so if you can solve this by yourselves, you will greatly lessen the blame assigned to you. But if the devils are far stronger than expected? Xia Qingyu glanced to the side as she said those words. The teleportation is right there, and our moon god realm will naturally come to your aid. Speaking of which, that was also what that Kaianai Fanchen said. However, news from all over the place has already confirmed one thing. The northern divine region has mobilized many of their upper and middle star realms, but we haven't seen a trace of their 3 king realms. After all, rulers are always afraid of death, so why would they personally venture out of the northern region? I'm afraid that my moon god realm and the Brahma monarch god realm won't even have a chance to intervene. On the surface, she made it sound like she was doing this for the sake of the eternal heaven god realm, that she would let them monopolize the glory so they could lessen their blame. But in reality, neither the moon god realm or the Brahma heaven god realm wanted to lose any fighting strength. AI! The eternal heaven god realm gave a long sigh of lamentation. Now that he thought about it, he had completely fallen into Kai Weiao's trap, the moment he had decided to bring Zhou Qingchen into the northern divine region. Xia Qingyu left, and Zhou Yuzi decided that he would no longer wait for those upper star realms who had yet to respond to his call to arms. He said, prepare to be teleported. Tai Yu, stay behind to defend our territory. Yes, Honorable Tai Yu replied. Royal Father. A young man with sharp brows and dreamy eyes descended from the skies. His white robes fluttered in the air as he landed in front of Zhou Yuzi. His eyes shone with sincere determination as he said, this child requests to join the battle. This man was Zhou Yuzi's newly appointed Eternal Heaven Crown Prince, Zhou Qingfeng. In fact, the ceremony to officially confer this title upon him was fast approaching. King Feng, you must not, Honorable Tai Yu said. These devils are extremely vicious, and there are far too many strange things about this invasion. As the future crown prince, you must not endanger yourself. No, Zhou Qingfeng lifted his head. There was no fear on his face as he said, it is precisely because this King Feng is the future crown prince that I cannot afford to be timid in the face of this devilish calamity. This is not only a disaster for the eastern region, it is also a huge disaster for our eternal heaven god realm. I request Royal Father allow this child to battle side by side with you. I will share your burdens with you, and I won't regret this decision even if I die. A few traces of admiration appeared in Zhou Yuzi's eyes. He did not hesitate for long before giving a slow nod of head. All right. King Feng, you will accompany your father, and we will bury these devils in the eastern region forever. Yes, Zhou Qingfeng bowed gracefully, his eyes burning with fervor. Author's note, the time for this strange setting of the stage is about over. A lot of huge explosions are about to occur. Eternal heaven, moon god, Brahma monarch tremble in fear. Oh, I seem to have missed one. Does the eastern divine region still have a 4th king realm? Forget it, it isn't important. 1. Both things can be used for cooking, but being framed in Chinese is literally being made to carry a black pot. King Yu had just returned from the eternal heaven god realm. The moment she stepped into divine moon city, she sensed that something was amiss. Many of her moon guards were currently spreading out and rushing toward the exits of the moon god realm. What's happening? Xia Qingyu asked in a soft voice, her eyebrows sinking in consternation. The voice of their god emperor caused the entire divine moon city to grind to a halt. Yao Yue, Lion Yue, and Jin Yue swiftly appeared before Xia Qingyu. Lion Yue anxiously replied, Master Shui Meiyan is no longer in the moon prison. Xia Qingyu's eyes instantly turned into chips of solid ice. Her head swiveled towards Jin Yue as she said, "Jin Yue, didn't this king tell you to keep a close watch over her?" Jin Yue's delicate body bent over as she said in a panicked voice, "Master, this maidservant immediately went to the moon prison after I received your orders. But when this maidservant reached the bottom of the moon prison, I discovered that Shui Meiyan had vanished without a trace." "So you're saying that Shui Meiyan escaped before that?" Xia Qingyu suddenly shifted her gaze to the side as she called out a name. Hengzhai, a tall man wearing silver armor, swiftly ran towards her. He knelt at her feet and said, "I greet the God Emperor." Yue Hengzhai, the commander-in-chief of the Moon Prison's guards. It has been 6 months since this king has personally entered the Moon Prison. During these 6 months, did anyone forcefully break through the 33-layered barrier at the bottom of the Moon Prison? Xia Qingyu said as she looked down at his kneeling figure. Yue Hengzhai answered with no hesitation, "Absolutely not. If the bottom of the Moon Prison is impacted by even the slightest force, Hengzhai would definitely sense it. Furthermore, the only one who has opened up the barrier at the bottom of the Moon Prison in the last 6 months is—" He glanced at Jin Yue before his voice dropped several octaves. "Divine Envoy Jin Yue." Yao Yue, Lion Yue, and Jin Yue were the 3 personal maidservants of the Moon God Emperor, so they possessed many special privileges. There was no place in the Moon God realm which was forbidden to them, and this included the bottom of the Moon Prison. HMPH? The look in Xia Qingyu's eyes subtly changed. At this time, Jin Yue looked up in panic. This was the first time that Xia Qingyu had ever looked at her so coldly, and it felt like she had been cast into a cruel, icy hell. "Jin Yue?" Xia Qingyu's cold voice contained traces of pain and disappointment. "Just how many benefits did the glazed light realm give you, to think that you'd actually dare to betray this king right under my very nose?" Jin Yue was greatly shocked by those words. She spoke in a flustered voice. "This maidservant wouldn't dare. This maidservant has never. You still dare to make excuses." Xia Qingyu flung out her sleeve, and a beam of purple light smacked into Jin Yue, blasting her into the air. "Jin Yue!" Lion Yue cried out in great shock as she hurriedly flew to catch Jin Yue. Yao Yue spoke up in an anxious voice. "Master, Jin Yue has accompanied you for so many years, and she has always been most loyal to you. Serving Master is the greatest joy of her life, so she definitely wouldn't do anything to betray Master." "Shut up," Xia Qingyu said in a cold voice. "You don't have the power to plead on her behalf." Jin Yue slowly wiped away the blood that trickled down the corner of her lips. She lay dazed in Lion Yue's arms. Her eyes were blurry and swimming with confusion, and they glimmered with the light of 1,000,000 broken stars. Of the 3 maidservants closest to the Moon God Emperor, she was the one who had served Xia Qingyu the longest. When she was not the Moon God Emperor yet, they were practically as close as sisters, and Jin Yue even thought that Xia Qingyu was the only person she could divulge everything to. But after Yue Wuya had died and she had been crowned Moon God Emperor, Xia Qingyu started growing distant. She grew so distant that she had even started to become a stranger to Jin Yue. But this was the first time that Xia Qingyu had ever attacked her. Compared to the pain her body was feeling, her heart, a heart that Xia Qingyu's image had been engraved into, had shattered to pieces. The pain and sorrow she felt were so deep that they cut through her very soul. "Master, this maidservant didn't do it." She knelt to the ground once more, her words accompanied by sobbing tears. "Even if this maidservant were to die, I would still never betray Master." "Oh, really?" Xia Qingyu's eyes remained chips of cold, hard ice in spite of Jin Yue's distress. "Fine, on account of your long service to this king can take it that you were bewitched by Shui Meiyan's divine stainless soul. Do you know why this king wanted to take Shui Meiyan into custody? The moment her divine stainless soul completely awakens, she will become incredibly terrifying. The devils are currently plaguing the eastern divine region, and now that she has escaped, it is very likely she will join their side. In the future, she will become an incredibly dangerous threat to us. Therefore, the crime of letting her escape is so heavy that even if you truly were bewitched by the divine stainless soul, how can I be allowed to spare you?" She did not wait for Jin Yue to explain herself. Xia Qingyu coldly pronounced her judgment. "You are to immediately leave the Moon God realm. From today onward, you are not to take a single step into the Moon God realm. Master, anyone who dares to plead on her behalf will share her punishment." Lion Yue and Yao Yue bit their bottom lips at the same time. Their eyes swam with confusion and bewilderment, but they did not dare to say anything. Jin Yue's beautiful eyes lost their color. She slowly pressed a hand against her chest as she looked at Xia Qingyu. Master, this maidservant is willing to prove my innocence with death. Death! Xia Qingyu remained unmoved, and her voice was as cold and detached as it had been from the start. You should know that this king will always tie up any loose ends. If you die in front of this king, then your parents, your siblings, and anyone directly related to you will be buried with you, but you can try it if you want. Jin Yue's body swayed violently. Her delicate and beautiful face, which already evoked feelings of tenderness and pity, turned an even more pitiable shade of white. Jin Yue! Lion Yue called out to her as she slowly shook her head. Jin Yue finally lowered the palm that she was holding to her chest as the tears that she had fought to hold back instantly burst from her eyes. She deeply bowed her delicate head toward Xia Qingyu as she said, Master, Jin Yue knows that she has committed a grave mistake. So from now on, I won't be able to stay by Master's side. I hope that Master will always take care of herself. Xia Qingyu did not reply. She coldly turned around as if she did not want to take another look at Jin Yue, but it was also as if she did not want anyone else to see her face. Jin Yue slowly rose to her feet. She gave Xia Qingyu another deep bow before she started to leave in a dazed and dispirited manner. Wait, Xia Qingyu suddenly said. Jin Yue's exquisite body shuddered, and she thought that Xia Qingyu had changed her mind. However, the only things she heard were merciless words that shattered her heart even further. This king does not even want to see a trace of you in this lifetime. Take your entire family and leave the Eastern Divine Region within the next 72 hours. Otherwise, don't blame this king for being heartless. Jin Yue felt as if her body had been thrust into a cold gale as it swayed violently. She let out a miserable voice that teetered on the edge of despair. Jin Yue will obey Master's command. Jin Yue departed, tears falling to the ground in her wake, but Xia Qingyu had not even turned around to look at her once. Lion Yue! Xia Qingyu's back was facing everyone as she gave an icy command. Immediately gather troops and sweep the surrounding star regions. I don't care if you have to uproot the ground, recapture Shui Meiyin at all costs. When you're searching for her, remember to spread the news that she has fled the Moon God realm. Heavily reward anyone who gives us any clues. Yao Yue, you are to personally surveil the glazed light realm. Yes, Master. Both Lion Yue and Yao Yue acknowledged their orders. At this time, the northern territories were being invaded by devils. The moment the situation started going out of control, the Moon God realm would immediately move out to suppress them. Yet they were now choosing to split off such a big portion of their core forces at such a delicate time, just to find one Shui Meiyin. However, in the wake of Xia Qingyu's fury and Jin Yue's exile, they did not dare to question her. At the same time, Xia Qingyu's figure slowly turned diaphanous as she swiftly disappeared from their vision and spiritual senses. Shui Meiyin had escaped from the Moon God realm. This news swiftly started to spread after the Moon God realm started their wide-scale search. But with the plague of devils upon them, this news only made people glance to the side. It was not significant enough to cause another great wave. In the eternal Heaven God realm, Zhou Ziuzi was already standing in front of the teleportation profound formation. He had quietly stood there for more than an hour as he carefully considered all the possible scenarios for the upcoming battle. When news of Shui Meiyin's escape from the Moon God realm reached his ear, he paid it no mind. In the end, he constructed a precise map of the eastern region's northern territories in his mind, highlighting the star realms which had been conquered by the devils and visualizing the distribution of the enemy's forces. When he finally opened his eyes, a cold light flickered in them. Activate the Grand Formation! White light erupted from the Grand Dimensional Formation and blanketed an area that was dozens of kilometers wide. Tai Yu! Zhou Ziuzi sent a sound transmission to Honorable Tai Yu, his deep and heavy voice ringing in his mind. Be ready for a sound transmission from me at any time. When the time is right, immediately use the voice of eternal heaven to mobilize all of the star realms and profound practitioners in the central and southern territories. Press toward the north with all of your might and cut off those damnable devils. Tai Yu understands. Honorable Tai Yu quickly sent a sound transmission back to Zhou Ziuzi. The Grand Dimensional Formation started to violently swirl. Dimensional energy that was far too vast started causing the surrounding space to ripple and undulate like a tsunami. The only power that could construct such a gigantic Grand Dimensional Formation in the short span of a few days was the Eternal Heaven God realm. Ladies and gentlemen, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor turned to face all the upper star realm kings as he said, "This disaster occurred because of this me. This old one is greatly heartened to have received all of your support in this time of need. He did not tell them that he had been framed and made a fool of, because he knew that no one would believe him. If he tried to forcefully prove his innocence now, it would only achieve the opposite of what he desired. What is the eternal Heaven God Emperor even saying? The eternal Heaven God Emperor is the one who has preserved order in the Eastern Divine region. You're the hero who quelled the disaster of the evil infant, who quelled countless other disasters. Your contributions to the world are immeasurable. How can today's disaster blot out even a fraction of eternal heaven's sacred light? A higher realm king immediately replied, "This disaster is a disaster that is afflicting every member of our Eastern Divine region. How can we allow the eternal Heaven God realm to bear it alone? Those cowardly and useless star realms in the northern territories will settle our debts with them after we've exterminated these devils. Given the strength gathered here today, we'll definitely be able to get rid of all of these lowly devils within the next 10 days. Even though the eternal Heaven God realm had become the main culprit for this incident, their divine might and sacred reputation, things which had existed for hundreds of millennia, were things that could not be shaken. 6 guardians, 30 eternal heaven elders, more than 140 higher realm kings, and the core fighters of their realm. When they added him, Xianxia, into the mix, they had nearly 200 divine masters, thousands of divine sovereigns, and a vast amount of divine kings and divine spirits. There were also some profound artifacts which were radiating incredibly shocking auras in their midst. Just as the Moon God Emperor had said, the eternal Heaven God realm had not made a single move over the last few days. But now that they were finally springing into action, they were prepared to turn the tables on the invading devils. Once we pacify the chaos caused by these devils, this old one will personally give all of you and the Eastern Divine region an explanation. Once he finished speaking, Xianxia waved a hand. Activate the formation. Move out. Dimensional power was released as wave after wave of the Eastern Divine regions. Elite forces were directly teleported to the borders of the Northern Territories, which placed them squarely behind the invading devils. In less than 30 minutes, all of their forces had been teleported over. The eternal Heaven God realm immediately returned to its usual peace and quiet. However, no one ever discovered that there was something a little odd about this peace. Not long after the eternal Heaven God Emperor had departed, 3 bent and crooked shadows emerged from a patch of darkness at the borders of the eternal Heaven God realm. 3 figures split up and flew in different directions before vanishing into the darkness yet again. A dense white light erupted from a point along the northern border of the Eastern Divine region. A grand dimensional formation appeared out of thin air, and a large number of people emerged from it. The aura radiating from them was exceptionally powerful. Xianxia and Zhou Qingfeng were the last to emerge from the profound formation. The area around them was incredibly quiet. In fact, it was so quiet that it was a little eerie, and they did not catch sight of any devils. "My lord, how do we proceed from here?" a guardian asked as he released his divine senses to sweep the area around them. Xianxia stretched out a hand, and a gigantic projection appeared in front of him. A map of all the star realms in the Eastern Divine region's northern territories was displayed on that screen, and the star realms conquered by the devils were dyed black. He tapped his finger in the air, causing dozens of bright dots of light to appear on the screen. "We will launch our attack from these 50 starting points. Every squad will take 3 star realms and will completely cut off any path of retreat that these devils have. There's no need to concern yourself with the state of the star realms. Devote all of your strength and attention to wiping out the devils. Once the voice of eternal heaven rings out across the heavens, we will have encircled them from both the north and the south, and they'll be in desperate straits then." The eternal Heaven God Emperor's voice was incredibly low and heavy. There were quite a few divine masters among the invading devils, but no one had seen any of their king realms in action. Even though he was inwardly sneering with contempt, he was still glad that he did not have to fight them. The eternal heaven truly does live up to its reputation of being supremely skilled at using spatial energy. What a fantastic encirclement strategy. Let me first congratulate you on your success. A woman's voice rang out from behind them, and it was as gentle as a light breeze, but as seductive as a devilish moan. Xianxia's eyes suddenly went cold as everyone else spun around simultaneously. A woman quietly floated in the skies to the north of them a few kilometers away. No one had sensed when she had appeared in that place, and this included Xianxia. "Devil Queen, The projection flickered out of existence as Zhou Yuzi turned around. He stared at Kai Waiao before he gave a dry laugh. This old one was actually under the impression that you didn't have the courage to step out of the darkness. The two words, Devil Queen, caused the expressions of the Eternal Heaven Guardians and the Hyatt Realm Kings to dramatically change. She had appeared alone, and no other auras could be sensed around her. Booms! All 6 Eternal Heaven Guardians prepared to attack as they released their Eternal Heaven divine power at the same time. Thunder and lightning roiled the heavens as the sky threatened to collapse under their divine might. Don't make any sudden moves. Zhou Zizhai raised a hand to stop them. An incredibly frightening array of strength was arrayed on one side, and Kai Waiao seemed to be facing them alone. But Zhou Yuzi had only faced Kai Waiao twice in his life, and each time he had taken a big loss. Even though there seemed to be a massive force arrayed against her alone, he remained completely on edge, and he felt as if thousands of mountains were weighing down on him. Because it definitely was not a coincidence that she had appeared at this exact time, in this exact place. This queen is only a weak woman in the end, so where would I find the courage to personally step into the fearsome tiger's den that is the Eastern Divine Region? Kai Waiao's voice was soft and cottony, and when the divine masters in Zhou Yuzi's party heard it, they felt their bodies go numb. All the divine sovereigns and divine kings felt their vision go blurry as they unconsciously withdrew their profound energy into their bodies. HMPH? Zhou Yuzi let out a soft snort, but he was busy clearing the hearts and minds of his party. The profound practitioners who had lapsed into a small daze shuddered as cold sweat drenched their bodies. The image of Zhou Qingchen's miserable death floated into his mind as Zhou Yuzi slowly curled his hands into fists. He forcefully restrained the wild rage that threatened to seize him, but his voice was growing deeper. Get all of your lackeys from the soul-stealing realm to show themselves. Hiding a part of your strength will only earn you ridicule. Kai Waiao pursed her lips before she started laughing softly. Her smile was ripe with meaning as she said, The Eternal Heaven God Emperor's bad habit of being overly suspicious really hasn't changed at all. This queen's cute children aren't here right now. They're in a place that will really surprise you. Zhou Yuzi frowned deeply. Kai Waiao calmly turned her eyes toward them. As she faced this incredibly frightening array of force, this aura which could suppress everything, no fear appeared on her face. On the contrary, her smile grew even deeper. To think that you managed to assemble such a large amount of strength and create such a frightening grand dimensional formation in this short amount of time. The Eternal Heaven God realm truly is outstanding. However, she gave a languid sigh before speaking in that soft and sultry voice of hers. Since you've moved such a large amount of force out of the Eastern Divine Region, what exactly would happen if you weren't able to instantly move it all back? When she finished speaking, the grand dimensional formation which had just completed its job started to violently shudder. After that, it exploded into fragments of shattered white light which filled the air. This sudden bizarre change caused Zhou Yuzi's expression to dramatically change. The foundations of this grand dimensional formation existed in the Eternal Heaven God realm. Its sudden collapse meant only one thing. The main formation that was located in the Eternal Heaven God realm had been destroyed. The Eternal Heaven God realm. An earth-shaking explosion rang out from 3 different directions. After that, a dark aura rushed toward the sky. It felt so gloomy and sinister that it sent chills down the spines of all those who felt it. At this time, the grand dimensional formation that had teleported Zhou Yuzi and his army to the northern borders of the Eastern Divine Region collapsed and exploded under a terrifying barrage of black energy beams. At the same time, the grand dimensional formations that connected the Eternal Heaven God realm to the other king realms and important regions of the Eastern Divine Region were destroyed by a sudden explosion of darkness. All of this had happened far too suddenly. There was no warning at all. These main dimensional formations had existed for hundreds of thousands of years, and every single one of them was incredibly sturdy. No normal power could destroy them. However, the ones who had destroyed these main, profound formations just so happened to be the 3 most dreadful existences in the northern divine region. The Yama realm's 3 Yama ancestors. The Eternal Heaven God realm was violently rocked. Countless figures flitted into the air as they rushed towards the explosion of dark energy. Furthermore, in the center of the Eternal Heaven God realm, a place that even an Eternal Heaven Elder could not casually approach, a dark figure materialized out of thin air. Xianxia, no one knew where he had come from or when he had arrived. Even the eternal heaven guardians who had stayed behind had not detected any strange people or auras. A gigantic bell lay in front of them. That was another divine artifact left behind by the gods. When the eternal heaven realm became a king realm, they changed its name to the Eternal Heaven Bell. The voice of eternal heaven, which allowed the eternal heaven god realm to project anyone's voice across the entire eastern divine region, was produced using this bell. He placed a hand on the eternal heaven bell as he used dark, profound energy to forcefully activate its power. His lips curved up into a smile that was as dark and sinister as demons. "Children of darkness, dance wildly." The eternal heaven bell thundered in the air as it transmitted that dark and horrific devilish voice to every corner of the eastern divine region, causing it to resound in all of the skies above the eastern divine region. Upon hearing that the devilish voice that seemed to have crawled up from the abyss, the entire eastern divine region seemed to suddenly grow murky and oppressive. Countless eastern region profound practitioners raised their heads in shock and terror. At this moment, dark eyes which had been waiting in the darkness sprang to life as an infinite amount of malice glowed within them. Author's note: everyone, you definitely mustn't forget about Jin Yue. She has an extremely important item on her person. An unbelievable number of terrifying devilish auras erupted from the center and the south side of the eastern divine region all at once. They distorted all space and devoured all light around them without question. A decrepit-looking profound arc that could accommodate several 100,000 profound practitioners at most rose from the south of the eastern divine region. The profound arc itself looked like an ordinary profound arc, but not so the person floating out of a black mist. It was none other than the Yama Emperor himself, Xianxia. Kill! And so began the creation of an endless sea of corpses. All around him, the Yama devils, Yama ghosts, and Yama soldiers rushed toward the shaking realms in front of them. On the other side, the witches, soul spirits and soul servants led by first witch Jai Xin, and Jai Ling also bared their dark fangs against their enemies. Tian Muyi of the Imperial Heaven Realm, Huo Tianxing of the Desolate Calamity Realm, the Great Viper Sage of the Divine Python Realm. All the footholds on Kai Weiao and Kaianai Yinger's projection transformed into a destructive whirlpool of darkness all at once. The lower and middle star realms to the north of the eastern divine region were overcome one by one, which kept everyone's eyes focused on them. Exceeding all expectations, the dark, profound practitioners of the king and most of the upper star realms had successfully infiltrated the central and southern regions of the eastern divine region. There were countless devils inside the refugees' profound arcs that were escaping from the northern realms, but not one person had noticed them until it was too late. It was easy to identify a devil person. Their aura was so chaotic that they themselves couldn't keep it under control. Therefore, it was impossible for one to conceal themselves for long, much less an entire group of devil people. That fact had been true for millions of years. Since the day the God realm itself was founded, it was just common sense, and there was nothing scarier and less defensible than something that transcended common sense. This was the true start of the devil calamity. The earth of countless realms was instantly dyed with darkness and blood. The eternal heaven realm had just transferred the core strength of over 140 upper star realms to the north to deal with the attacks. Even the realm kings had answered the call to arms and departed their realms. As a result, the southern region was left mostly empty and unguarded. That was the moment the dark forces of two of the northern divine region king realms struck. The true nightmare descended when Yun Qi's voice of eternal heaven spread across all of the eastern divine region. Meanwhile, in the eternal heaven god realm, everyone was alarmed after their most important grand teleportation formation was destroyed, and three absolutely terrifying auras of darkness had erupted from three different directions. The guardians, the eternal heaven elders, the adjudicators, and everyone else had rushed out of their palaces and halls immediately to investigate them. Honorable Tai Yu was staring toward the front without moving a muscle. His pupils were shrinking, and his scalp was tingling like never before. It was because he couldn't believe how powerful the fiendish energies were. Not only were they all god emperors, even the weakest among them was as strong as the eternal heaven god emperor himself, if not stronger. 3 god emperors? How was this possible? Where did they come from? And how long had they been lurking inside the eternal heaven realm? The last thought raging in his mind was the worst of all. All 3 god emperors, so powerful that he was positively shaking from fear. had appeared directly inside their borders, so it was too late even if he were to activate their strongest sealing barrier right now. The eternal heaven bell rang without warning, and Honorable Tai Yu's already ugly expression turned a new shade of purple. He immediately turned around and rushed toward the heart of the god realm. It was there he saw a pitch-black figure turning around to face him. "Yun Chi," Honorable Tai Yu muttered and experienced an instantaneous flashback. He had sensed Yun Chi's aura back at the borders of the northern divine region, back when Zhou Qingchen died, and he had to physically drag Zhou Yuzi away or risk losing his god emperor. However, since he hadn't caught a full glimpse of the young man's appearance at the time, this was technically their first meeting after the end of the Crimson Calamity. It felt like it had been ages since the last time he had seen Yun Chi. In his memory, Yun Chi's eyes were as clear as water. When facing his elders, his gaze was gentle and respectful. When he was fighting on the conferred god stage, his eyes were filled with so much determination that it moved anyone's heart. He especially remembered the time he had faced the heaven-smiting devil emperor alone at the edge of the primal chaos. No youngster of this era had shone as brightly as this young man did at that time. Today, Yun Chi's black hair was floating behind him with unseen power, every strand infused with unimaginable darkness. His smile was dark and sinister, and his eyes were almost the scariest pools of the abyss he had ever seen in his life. The young man's aura was that of a level 10 divine sovereign, but his entire body felt as cold as ice. "Moon-splitting cascade," Tai Yu muttered to himself. That was the one way Yun Chi could have slipped in without anyone noticing. Even so, they were a king realm, and they had allowed a divine sovereign, a dark divine sovereign no less, to sneak all the way to their core without being detected. It was humiliating, to say the least. Honorable Tai Yu raised his hand as a pale white ring of energy appeared between his fingers. The vast power of a level 10 divine master immediately descended upon Yun Chi. But all the young man had to offer the strongest guardian of the eternal heaven realm was an eerie, incomprehensible smile. He raised an arm to reveal a red, pocket-sized profound arc in his palm. Then he flicked it into the air and watched it morph into a 30,000-meter-long giant that blocked the sun. Honorable Tai Yu automatically looked up. Then his eyes widened as if someone had shone a million rays of piercing light at it. Xianxia Yinger was the first person to jump out of the entrance of the primordial profound arc, the divine oracle lashing toward Honorable Tai Yu like a golden snake. Behind her, the Moon Eaters, Burning Moon divine envoys, and Burning Moon guards led by Fen Deaki rushed out and formed a gigantic, despairing curtain of darkness that blotted out the sky itself. The full strength of the Burning Moon realm had descended upon the eternal heaven god realm. In that moment, the shock Honorable Tai Yu and the rest of the denizens of the eternal heaven realm experienced was almost enough to kill them on the spot. Beneath the darkness, the devil master's voice sounded crueler and more ruthless than even a true devil's. "Kill them all, every man, every beast, every plant, all must die." The devil people of the Burning Moon realm didn't verbally respond to his command. They simply unleashed the darkness, the violence and the anger they had been withholding for countless generations toward the shaking creatures beneath their feet. Boom, an instant was all it took to turn the most sacred land of the eastern divine region into a bloody, smoking battlefield. The inheritors of the eternal heaven realm's immortal power were called guardians for a reason. It was because they hadn't just inherited the power, but also the will to protect eternal heaven realm, the eastern divine region and justice. Not only that, the guardians weren't the only ones who carried out this will. It also included all the denizens of the eternal heaven realm. The moment of shock only lasted an instant. When blood was spilled across the sacred lands of the eternal heaven realm, when the familiar faces they once knew were blasted to bits right before their eyes, their belief immediately transformed them into ferocious beasts that would do everything to protect what was important to them. The profound practitioners of the eternal heaven realm and the burning moon realm clashed against one another like wild beasts. Both sides were using their sharpest fangs to tear their enemies apart. They were fighting in the eternal heaven god realm. The number of eternal heaven realm profound practitioners was at least 100 times greater than that of the burning moon realm. However, Zhou Yuzi, 6 guardians, and half the elders had just left to quell the incursions in the north. Meanwhile, the Burning Moon realm had shown up with all their Moon Eaters and Burning Moon divine envoys. Not only that, they had to deal with Xianxia Yinger, the terrifying 3 Yama ancestors. and the devil master himself, Xianxia. A terrible battle erupted across soil no one had ever dared to taint before now. So much blood was spilled that it started forming mist, which covered the entire realm like clouds. Xianxia Yinger and Honorable Taiyu were still fighting one another. They were both level 10 divine masters, so the world beneath them suffered every time they clashed. Xianxia floated into the air and stared indifferently at the sea of blood spreading swiftly beneath his feet. Then he stretched his arms wide and muttered, "Calamity and misfortune." The world suddenly turned dim as darkness descended from above. A gigantic storm of darkness had appeared out of nowhere after Xianxia said those words. At the same time, a black gleam suddenly entered the eyes of the Moon Eaters and the burning moon divine envoys. The storm of darkness swept across all space and entered the dark, profound practitioners' bodies. The dark element it contained was so thick that it was bubbling, and it increased the Moon Eaters and the burning moon divine envoys' auras like crazy. In the eternal heaven god realm, the Guardians were the only ones who had the strength to fight the Moon Eaters on equal footing. However, that quickly changed as the world darkened, and the Moon Eaters suddenly grew much stronger than before. They were immediately suppressed and thrown back in defeat. The burning moon divine envoys were making quick work of the eternal heaven elders as well. J-I-H-H-H-H-H? Suddenly, a crazed laugh that sounded like it came from the throat of an evil spirit pierced through all the commotion on the battlefield and into everyone's ears. A crooked old man had torn apart space itself and grabbed the head of a guardian in an iron grip. The latter had just been beaten back by Fendayaki when he was caught by a ghastly, claw-like hand. The next moment, black energy poured into his head, and his whole body exploded into fleshy pieces that flew dozens of kilometers away before finally hitting the ground. It was as loud as it was cruel. He wasn't the first guardian to perish in this era, but the manner in which he had died was definitely the worst in all of the eternal heaven realm's history. Tai Yuan, Honorable Taiyu shouted so loudly that blood was forming in his throat. Jia. After Yan 1 had made his debut, a skeletal giant at least 300,000 meters tall dropped down from the sky and hit the ground in one giant explosion. It was Yan 2. Where he landed, columns of darkness shot all the way to the sky, and the ground was transformed into a giant pit of hell. Hundreds of thousands of people were annihilated in an instant, and only 2 eternal heaven elders managed to escape with just some injuries. But they only survived half a breath longer than their brethren. A pair of black claws passed through their backs before they could do anything and tore them into pieces. The last thing they heard was Yan 2's strange, bloodthirsty, and ecstatic laughter. They were both level 2 divine masters, and yet they were completely powerless before the terror that was Yan 2. Having lived in the bone sea of eternal darkness for millions of years, the 3 Yama ancestors had grown so powerful that they were positively terrifying. What should have been a temporary stalemate immediately turned into one-sided slaughter after they showed up. Honorable Tai, you dared not look away from Xianxia Yinger for even a moment because of how powerful she was. But there was no ignoring the chokingly thick blood stench that filled his lungs or the blood-curdling screams that pierced his heart. Besides that, he couldn't understand why Xianxia Yinger, having been crippled and robbed of her inheritance and divine power by Xianxia Fanshan himself, was able to grow this powerful in such a short amount of time. Suddenly, he caught a glimpse of Xianxia from the corner of his eye. Floating in the air, the young man was surrounded by a storm of darkness. All the devil people under his power were fighting like they were on drugs. Bang! He swung the white ring in his hand at the divine oracle, the impact splitting the space between him and Xianxia Yinger. Then he backed away and charged toward Xianxia without warning. However, he barely flew a couple of meters when a pitch-black claw suddenly appeared directly in his path. A dark, disdainful laugh from Yan 3 immediately followed. "Go back to your playground, small fry, jihehe." Shocked, Taiyu tried to perform a quick turn in midair, but the claw still scratched his ribs. Boom, an explosion as black as purgatory detonated at the point of contact, and Honorable Taiyu was sent flying away while black blood spilled through his lips. He immediately stabilized himself and tried to charge Xianxia again. However, he froze when he noticed the world around him. He was in the eternal heaven god realm, one of only 3 king realms in the entire eastern divine region. This was the sacred realm that had carried their entire history and glory since its foundation. But wherever he looked, the only thing that entered his sight was blood-soaked ruin. The buildings that symbolized his realm were collapsing. His kinsmen and his disciples were screaming, crying, being torn apart. murdered and subsumed into the mountains of bones and sea of blood beneath his feet. The last 3 guardians from his family whom he shared a brotherly friendship with were being attacked by the rampaging moon-eaters. One of them had their hands bitten off their arms, and the other one had 3 black holes across their body. Pu, another guardian, a grievously injured Honorable Tai Yao, was split into 3 pieces after a devastating swipe from Yan 1. Just 10 days ago, they were chatting and drinking merrily together. Royal Father, W.A. He heard his God Emperor's descendants crying and screaming at the top of their lungs. He turned his eyes only to see them shredded like withered grass by the sides of darkness while they were escaping. No one died with an intact corpse left behind. His eyes lost all color, and his complexion was as pale as a corpse's. Every hair, every pore on his body was shaking violently. Frozen in shock, all he could do was groan like a dying man. A nightmare. This had to be just a nightmare. Yun-Chi lowered his arm and withdrew calamity and misfortune because it was no longer necessary. Without glancing even once at Honorable Tai Yu, he dashed toward the conferred God stage. Once he had made his name on this stage. Once it had even made him proud and filled him with yearning. Above the conferred God stage, he circulated the laws of nothingness before unleashing his darkness profound energy. The silent profound formation started glowing and expanding in the sky. At the same time, star tablets from every corner of the eastern divine region started glowing faintly with light. It was the great projection formation the eternal heaven realm had set up for the profound God convention a long time ago. Yun-Chi let out a low chuckle as he pushed the great projection formation slowly into the sky. He muttered, "It would be a huge shame to miss such a fantastic show, don't you agree, old dog eternal heaven?" The northern border of the eastern divine region. When the voice of eternal heaven started to ring in the air, the faces of Zhou Zuzi and everyone else from the eternal heaven God realm dramatically changed as bewilderment appeared in their eyes. Yun-Chi, Zhou Zuzi turned his head towards the sky, a sinister look flashing across his face. He would never forget Yun-Chi's voice even if he died. However, deep panic, shock, and fear appeared on his face after that. That was clearly the voice of eternal heaven, something that could only be released by the eternal heaven bell. This meant that Yun-Chi was currently in the eternal heaven realm, and the eternal heaven bell was located in its very heart. "Royal Father, this sounds like the voice of eternal heaven," Zhou Qingfeng said in a heavy voice. "Could it be? What is going on?" The guardians who were with him raised their heads to look towards the heavens. For a moment, they could scarcely even believe their own ears. At this time, the sound transmission jades of Zhou Zuzi and all of the guardians started flashing and buzzing with incredible intensity. Hoarse, trembling voices filled with fear and panic started crazily flooding through them. "Royal Father, devil people have invaded. We don't know how they appeared inside our realm, but Royal Father, you need to hurry back. You need to hurry back. My lord, 3 incredibly frightening monsters have appeared in the realm. All of our main profound formations have been destroyed. Also, what is that red profound arc? My lord, our eternal heaven is under attack. Swiftly return to help us." As one of the king realms of the eastern divine region, they were a power that stood at the pinnacle of the current era. They did not fear any enemy, and no one had ever dared to create trouble in their realm. However, the sound transmissions that were bombarding them now tore at their hearts and minds. Every word filled Zhou Zuzi with cold dread. The eternal heaven God realm was always surrounded by an isolation barrier, and if they truly met with any colossal danger, they could activate a barrier that was practically indestructible, one that was on par with the absolute star soul barrier. However, as those witlessly terrified voices reverberated in his mind, he could scarcely believe, could not even imagine what sort of frightening situation had suddenly confronted them. It was also at this moment that the sound transmission jades of all the gathered higher realm kings started flashing like mad. Their expressions started changing, and each was uglier than the last. Fear and panic started to appear in their eyes, and it was as if all of them had been plunged into a nightmare. "Sect Master, devil people have invaded, we're currently surrounded by them." "Royal Father, you need to return as quickly as you can. These devils are endless, and some of them are even divine masters. Our sect protection barrier is about to break." "Sect Master, we are facing a countless number of devil people. The 9th Elder has already." Young Master, UWAH." Their ears were ringing with the news that their star realms, their sects, were being besieged. Miserable wails and the booming sound of energy exploding filled these short sound transmission, and it was as if they were seeing a literal sea of blood spread out in front of them. These 143 realm kings had responded to the call of the eternal heaven god realm, and they had even brought all of their realm's elite forces together with them. They had come to the northern border to encircle and exterminate all devils. However, devil people had now appeared in the southern territories and started to attack their undefended homes. Furthermore, the devil people who were attacking their homes were far more frightening in both power and numbers. They were stunned by these developments. Blood started draining from their faces as their bodies trembled violently. They could not believe what was happening. Why and how had the devils appear in the southern territories? All the news, all their senses, told them that the devils had been running wild in the northern territories. Furthermore, the number of devil people far exceeded their wildest estimations. Just how many devil people had the northern divine region mobilized? Just how had they appeared in the southern territories? Zhou Zuzi's entire body went cold. He stared at Kai Weiao and his voice trembled as he spoke. What a great devil queen! What a great northern divine region! Eternal heaven god emperor! Before Zhou Zuzi had even finished speaking, a higher realm king yelled at him in a hoarse voice. He had practically scrambled to Zhou Zuzi, and his face was warped as he yelled at him in a hoarse voice. Hurry! The Grand Teleportation Formation, hurry up and activate the Grand Teleportation Formation. My sect is under siege and I need to go back. I need to go back. His hoarse, deafening roar startled and roused everyone as if waking them up from a dream. None of the higher realm kings could even be bothered with the devil queen of the north at this moment. All of them rushed towards Zhou Zuzi as their eyes bulged out in extreme shock and fear. They started to yell and beg Zhou Zuzi in extremely hoarse voices. Hurry! The teleportation formation. Where is the teleportation formation? If I don't go back now, my sect is finished. The leader of the devils who are attacking my sect is very likely a level 5 divine master or stronger. Eternal heaven god emperor. Eternal heaven god emperor. Boom! An energy wave exploded outwards. Under the power of the guardians, all of the higher realm kings that were rushing toward Zhou Zuzi were fiercely shoved backwards. Zhou Zuzi sucked in a deep breath as he strove to compose himself. His voice was heavy and laced with pain as he said, "The Grand Dimensional Formation's foundation in the eternal heaven god realm has been destroyed. We were tricked by these devils." The foundation of their formation had been destroyed, and the great void cauldron had fallen into Yun Qi's hands. Even if Zhou Zuzi and the 6 guardians who had accompanied him had the power to traverse the heavens, there was no way they could build a dimensional formation that could connect the north and the south of the eastern divine region in such a short amount of time. "Ayah, tricked. You're making it sound really awful," Kai Weiao said in a cheery voice. "The smart Alec who brought all of them here wasn't this queen, you know. It was you, eternal heaven god emperor. But now you want to blame little old me? How shameless." Kai Weiao's words hit Zhou Zuzi like a bucket of soul-piercingly cold water. The sound transmission continued to ring in his ear. Each voice was more shrill and terrified than the last, and he felt as if countless blades were being plunged into his heart. "Eternal heaven god emperor, we all came here on your—" A higher realm king was on the verge of tearing his scalp open. His eyes were swimming with panic and confusion, and he immediately came to his senses. No matter how furious or resentful he was, the person he was speaking to was the eternal heaven god emperor. So how could he curse him? How would he even dare to curse him? He suddenly sprang to his feet and rushed toward the south as he roared in a hoarse voice. "Go! Let us go!" Now that one higher realm king had already spoken up, what did the rest of them have to wait for? After a moment, countless profound auras erupted at full force. The strong individuals who had crossed half a divine region to come assemble here crazily surged toward the south, the direction in which their star realms lay. None of them even bothered to bid the Zhou Zuzi farewell, much less hesitate. What devil people? What devil queen of the north? They could not even be bothered about those things right now. Their star realms, their sects, the foundations of their ancestors, their wives and children, at this moment, they were being assailed by an incredibly fearsome devilish calamity. The only thing they could do was to return home as fast as they could. They hated that they could not burn their blood essence to increase their speed by even a little bit. Zhou Zuzi had completely lost control of the situation. Even the dignified authority of the eternal heaven god realm was completely useless under such circumstances. Zhou Qingfeng was also urging his father anxiously. "Royal father, we need to get back as fast as possible. Those invading devil people seem to be far more fearsome than we have even dreamed of. If we don't, it really might be too late. Zhou Yuzi circulated profound energy through his body as he tried his best to maintain his composure, but his chest was already violently heaving, and that bone-penetrating chill had long since spread from his heart to his entire body. Wails of despair actually started to ring in his ears. Tai Yu and the rest of the Guardians had remained behind in the eternal heaven god realm, along with all of their elders. They also had billions of disciples, and it was even their home ground. How did the situation get so bad in such a short amount of time? Return! He clenched his teeth together so hard that they nearly shattered as he gave that command. None of the people from the eternal heaven god realm dared to hesitate for even a moment. A storm was left billowing in their wake as they rushed to return home. You want to leave? Kai Wao's bewitching lips curved up into a small smile. Did you ask for this queen's permission? The black mist wreathing Kai Wao's body dispersed and gently brushed over like black silk. That simple movement alone immediately created a black scar in space that was hundreds of kilometers long. It was as if she had carved an abyss of darkness into the very fabric of reality. The heavens and the earth split apart under the might of that abyss. The sect disciples who were weaker were instantly swallowed up by it, and they did not even have time to scream before they were turned to nothingness. Bang, 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 bang. A whole bunch of strong individuals slammed into the ground, and some of them suffered heavy injuries on the spot. However, not a single person turned around to retaliate. In fact, they did not even bother casting a glance in her direction. They immediately took to the skies again as they desperately rushed south. An incredibly strange and ridiculous scene was playing out at the Eastern Divine Region's northern borders. A huge crowd of Eastern Divine Region profound practitioners were trying to flee south with all of their might. Meanwhile, a single person, Kai Wao, was corralling 10 million people all by herself, and every time she attacked, she took countless lives. There was clearly such a huge disparity in strength between both sides, yet no one bothered to turn around and attack her. Their homes were being besieged by devil people. If they were late by even a fraction of a second, their entire sects and clans might already be wiped out. Now that even their roots were going to be pulled out, where could they find the heart or time to fight Kai Wao? Rumble! The eternal heaven god emperor swiveled his head to look back at her. He flung out his horsetail whisk, and his power collided with Kai Wao's power in midair. At the same time, he crushed 3 strangely colored crystals in his hand, causing 3 small sound transmission profound formations to appear. Brahma Monarch God Realm, Star God Realm, Moon God Realm. The eternal heaven god realm is under attack and the situation is extremely severe. Please rescue us. The sound transmission profound formation disappeared, and Zhou Yuzi managed to calm himself down a little. From the sound transmissions that had come from the eternal heaven god realm, he knew that the dimensional formations connecting it to the 3 other king realms had been destroyed as well. However, given the distance between the king realms and the extreme speed at which they could respond, they would definitely arrive within several hours. Given the amount of strength he had left in the eternal heaven god realm and their hundreds of thousands of years worth of foundation, no matter how bad the situation became, they would still definitely be able to hold on for a few hours. After that, he spun around to clash with Kai Wao before he let out a deep roar. All of you are to return to the eternal heaven god realm as soon as possible. Do not stop for anything. Rumble. The eternal heaven god emperor's power violently clashed with the devil queen's power, causing the earth and the heavens to split open. Devil queen, your northern region destroyed your own star realms and framed my eternal heaven god realm, and now you are even tormenting our eastern divine region in such a way. A devil's heart is malevolent and cruel. Your evil deeds are so numerous that they could fill the sky. Neither heaven nor earth can tolerate your wicked deeds. Aren't you afraid that the heavenly law will destroy you? Every time Zhou Yuzi waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, profound light that shone as bright as the midday sun shot out from it. Imperious might welled up in his furious eyes, and righteous words of anger erupted from his mouth like peals of thunder. But Kai Wao did not even deign to reply to him. Instead, she graced him with a mocking smile. She pointed a finger toward him as light flickered in her devilish eyes. All of the light in the area went out in an instant, as a gigantic domain of darkness appeared in the world like a devilish abyss. It devoured the eternal heaven divine power in the area and blasted Zhou Yuzi dozens of kilometers backward in the next instant. Whether it was his profound strength or the strength of his soul, Zhou Yuzi was not a match for Kai Weiao, and this was something he was made deeply aware of 10,000 years ago. However, Kai Weiao certainly could not defeat Zhou Yuzi in a short amount of time. It was exceedingly rare for god emperors to ever truly have a clash of arms, because even the most simple clash of their powers would result in a calamity that mortals could not even begin to imagine. Kai Weiao's dark power was filled with an oppressive might that threatened to capsize the heavens and devour the world. Even someone as strong as Zhou Yuzi felt a chill of fear when faced with that power. Even if he flared his soul power to its limits, he still could not shake that subtle but nagging feeling of fear. When he faced Kai Weiao in this moment, he felt like an invisible demon was firmly latched to his soul. Amidst the collapsing space and vanishing light, Zhou Yuzi had been forced back several thousand kilometers before even a single hour had passed. Even though he had not suffered any serious injuries, his face and arms were already scorched black, and his body was riddled with hundreds of small black holes, holes that had been carved into his body by Kai Weiao's devouring darkness. He was in incredibly sorry shape. However, Kai Weiao did not even look like she had been scratched. At this time, the stars around the star realms they were approaching started to blossom with a strange light. Following that, many projections appeared in the sky as they opened up over countless places within the eastern divine region. Once those screens opened up, wails of incredible misery started to ring in the air, and countless eyes in the eastern divine region immediately looked to the sky. Zhou Yuzi, who was in the middle of raising his horsetail whisk, unconsciously raised his head to look at the screen that had opened up above him. His body rigidly froze in that instant, and he looked as if he had been struck by 1,000,000 bolts of lightning. Countless bloody veins immediately popped open in those eyes which had been filled with divine light. At this moment, Kai Weiao had compassionately stayed her hand as she sat back and enjoyed the incredibly entertaining and dazzling scene that was playing out in front of Zhou Yuzi's eyes. The screen was showing him a world entirely drenched in blood. Blood-stained ruins, bloodied people, bloody mountains of corpses, blood-soaked land. Even the skies and clouds had been dyed a frighteningly dense shade of blood. Those blood-stained ruins were collapsed divine halls and eternal heaven palaces. The bloody mountains of corpses were made up of the bodies of countless eternal heaven disciples. The pools of blood could practically form an ocean of eternal heaven's blood. Bloody fog, wails of misery, death. Zhou Yuzi's body started shuddering harder and harder, and the bloody veins in his eyes were frantically exploding as his entire body seemed to turn pallid. It was as if all the blood had been sucked out of him in a single instant. The eternal heaven god realm, the number 2 king realm in the eastern divine region, so powerful that normally nobody would dare offend them. Even when he had heard all of those frantic sound transmissions, even when they started to be filled with fear and despair, the word defeat had never crossed his mind once. Because that was the eternal heaven god realm. Even if he had mobilized a large amount of its strength, there was no way his remaining forces would truly be defeated on their own turf by the invading devil people. However, in a single hour, no, in less than an hour, it had actually turned into a blood-colored hell. His eternal heaven god realm had been turned into hell on earth. He was not witnessing the brave resistance that he had imagined. Instead, a one-sided massacre seemed to be playing out in front of his eyes. The collapsing eternal heaven disciples, the eternal heaven elders who were being chopped to pieces, and even the occasional guardian, who flashed by the screen from time to time, had suffered shocking wounds. Furthermore, every single guardian was facing 2 terrifying devils who were at least equal to them in strength. There was also Honorable Tai Yu, who simply floated in midair in a daze. It was as if his soul had left his body. At this time, a face suddenly appeared on the screen. It was a face that all of the Eastern Divine Region's profound practitioners were exceedingly familiar with. But it was now also a face that seemed extremely unfamiliar to them. His black eyes were like 2 dark abysses. His smile was practically demonic, and the moment his face appeared on that screen, the atmosphere in the entire Eastern Divine Region suddenly grew hushed and stifling. Old dog eternal heaven! His lips curled into a sinister smile as his voice reverberated in everyone's ears like the curses of a bloodthirsty demon. It's been a long time. Are you satisfied with this greeting gift that I've sent you? Zhou Yuzi's mouth gaped open. At some point in time, his eyes had turned scarlet red, and his throat started moving up and down in a warped manner. A long time passed before he finally managed to whisper in a voice that sounded as dry and withered as a desiccated tree branch. Xianxia, the last time we met in the northern divine region, I casually squished one of your sons like a bug. Xianxia gave a deep chuckle as he stretched out his hand and made the same crushing action he had made when he had obliterated Zhou Qingchen. But since we're meeting again under such splendid circumstances in the eastern divine region, how can my greeting gift be any lighter than that? He thrust a palm backwards, and a beam of black light suddenly shot out from it. Zhou Yuzi's pupils violently contracted as a tiny world hidden in the heart of the eternal heaven god realm collapsed with a bang, flinging out its occupants. Several hundred people immediately appeared on the screen. The moment these figures were flung out of the tiny world, Zhou Yuzi immediately started howling like a wild beast. In the eternal heaven god realm, the dazed honorable Tai Yu spasmed as if thousands of swords had pierced his soul. He let out a furious roar that was as loud as thunder. Run! Hurry up and run! That tiny world that had just been destroyed had been created by their grand ancestor with the great void cauldron. It was used as a hideaway when the eternal heaven god realm was in great peril, and it was basically impossible to detect from the outside. Yet Xianxia had destroyed it with a single blow. The ones who could be hidden even in the midst of this calamity were undoubtedly important people, in fact. They were Zhou Yuzi's most illustrious and capable descendants. When Xianxia arrived, he had already sensed the existence of this special tiny world, but he deliberately left it alone. How could he not give such a luxurious gift to Zhou Yuzi himself? Honorable Tai Yu let out a furious roar as he rushed toward Xianxia, but a frail body suddenly flashed in front of him like black lightning. Boom! As an explosion of dark energy rang out in the air, space collapsed, and Honorable Tai Yu spat out a mouth of black blood before he was sent spinning away like a top. Zhou Yuzi, and every profound practitioner from the eastern divine region who witnessed this scene were nearly shocked to death. The entire world knew that Honorable Tai Yu was the strongest eternal heaven guardian. He was a level 10 divine master who stood at the very peak of the profound way. Yet he had actually been sent flying by a single blow. He had been blasted away while blood streamed from his mouth. An elderly man wrapped in a pitch-black mantle appeared in this warped scene. His face was extremely ugly, and his body was as dried and withered as a skeleton. But when his eyes turned toward the projection profound formation, the wild and sinister black light that flashed in those ancient eyes sent a chill down the spine of countless profound practitioners. Yan 1, the strongest Yama ancestor. The strength of these 3 Yama ancestors was far too frightening, and this was not only something the eternal heaven god realm felt. Even the Moon Eaters who had personally witnessed the might of the Yama ancestors all felt a deep shock and fear seep into their bones. In fact, they were even made to feel that their presence was basically unwarranted. These 3 old monsters alone probably had enough strength to level the entire eternal heaven god realm by the end of the day. Royal Father, save me, save me. The inhabitants of the tiny world could witness everything that was happening outside, so their wits had long since been frightened out of them. Now that they had been thrown out of the tiny world, and the terrifying demons were right in front of them, the descendants of the eternal heaven's royal bloodline and will had simply collapsed in despair. They were like a bunch of startled birds which had started to flee noisily. Hee, how noisy, Xianxia said with a grin on his voice. Did old dog eternal heaven never teach any of his children how to properly greet guests? He gently flicked a finger as he lazily said, Yan 3, properly teach them how to remain silent on behalf of that old dog eternal heaven. Yes, master, Jiha. As he let out an excited, blood-curdling cackle, Yan 3's body soared into the sky as he sped after the fleeing descendants of Zhou Yuzi. The veins in Zhou Yuzi's scarlet eyes were on the verge of exploding, and he felt as if his body was being mauled by gigantic mallets. His body swayed violently before he suddenly shot into the sky and yelled in a frantic voice, Stop! 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 Boom, boom, he waved his arms wildly in the air as he desperately threw his out-of-control eternal heaven-divine power at the image of Yan 3. However, what he saw was 3 black claws of energy that Yan 3 had launched out with his ghost claw. Rip! Under those black claws, the shuddering space, the blood-stained ground, and more than 100 fleeing figures were instantly torn apart. Kier, Kinghen. Ah! The sky was filled with Zhou Yuzi's heart-wrenching screams. They were like the howls of a despairing beast or the wails of a wraith in pain. Anyone who heard them would never believe that they belonged to the eternal heaven god emperor himself. Nothing he had ever experienced in his nightmares came close to the cruel despair of watching his own children and grandchildren being slaughtered right in front of him. He screamed and attacked the image in the sky like a madman, but no matter how many times the projection crumbled and reformed, he couldn't stop hearing Yan 3's demonic laughter, couldn't stop watching Yan 3 tearing his people apart again and again. Kai, 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 Kai. Yan 3 swung his arms repeatedly until he formed a gigantic web of darkness made of black claw marks. Everything beneath it, even space itself, was turned into fleshy bits and bloody mist. Zhou Yuzi eventually stopped moving. Blood blurred his vision and tore his heart and soul into pieces. His whisk slipped out of his grasp and hit the cold, hard ground beneath him. His face was full of tears. Less than 2 years ago, after Zhou Qingchen died, he thought that there was nothing in the world that could make him cry anymore. He was wrong. Not only was he crying tears, he was crying blood out of his eyes, his ears, his nose, his mouth. Every orifice on his face was bleeding as his vision alternated between gray and white. Then the entire world started spinning faster and faster. Pooh! He suddenly opened his mouth and threw up blood. There was so much blood that it actually formed a huge blood mist. Then he fell from the sky without warning and hit the ground hard. Kai Waya walked up to him and glanced at him from the corner of her eye. The well-respected eternal heaven god emperor was vomiting blood like it was free and lying limply on the ground like a piece of dead wood. The light in his eyes had faded completely, leaving behind only murky, deathly gray. She didn't look at him for more than an instant. She then asked coldly and pitilessly, "Does it hurt?" Pushing himself off the ground, Zhou Yuzi raised his head shakily and stared at Kai Waya with blurry, bloody vision. His face was so white that he looked like a man at the end of his lifespan. "You devils," he uttered hoarsely. Every word was wet with blood. "Heh," Kai Waya chuckled. "You are correct. When every person in the world calls you a devil, when you are locked away in a cage and slaughtered like prey, what else can you be but a devil? Even better, the world did this simply because we possess darkness profound energy, not because we had ever committed any unforgivable crimes." She sneered. "Am I right, O righteous one?" Zhou Yuzi grabbed his blood-stained whisk and looked up again. His grayish-white pupils were now dyed by blood-red violence. "You, monstrous devils, all deserve to be destroyed by the heavenly law." At this point, he was starting to lose his mind. He was already a firm believer that all devil people must die from the start, and his hatred for them only deepened after the terrible death of Zhou Qingchen, and now the destruction of eternal heaven realm. Kai Waya smiled coolly and sorrowfully. 4 years ago, when the heaven-smiting devil emperor returned, she could have enslaved all the beings in the primal chaos and allowed her kin, the hateful devil gods, to vent their million-year hatred on the god realm and turn it into the worst purgatory in existence. It was she, the Empress of Devils, who chose to sacrifice herself and her entire clan for the sake of those who were countless planes beneath her level. It was she who protected the entire world and the primal chaos. Jasmine, the heavenly slaughter star god, was hunted all over the place after a devil artifact transformed her into a devil, but she still showed up when the time called for it and sealed the crimson crack with the evil infant's power. As for Yun Qi, I could tell you that he already had darkness profound energy from the first day he entered the god realm. This means that the Yun Qi you knew was a devil person from the very beginning. Yet he was the one who stood up and faced the heaven-smiting devil emperor when the rest of you were on your knees and shaking like leaves. He even believed that saving the world was his sworn duty, as funny as it sounds. It was because of him the heaven-smiting devil emperor ultimately chose to depart the primal chaos. A dark gleam gathered soundlessly in Kai Waya's eyes as she continued. "You, Zhou Yuzi, know better than anyone who the person was that averted that calamity and saved everyone. The devil emperor, the evil infant, and Yun Qi are all devils. I won't even deny that they are some of the purest and most extreme of all devils. But it was they who saved the god realm and all the living beings of the primal chaos. They are the reason you're still alive to call us devils right now." A trembling, inhuman noise escaped Zhou Yuzi's throat. The black gleam in her eyes grew darker and darker. When a person speaks of people with sacred hearts, they should really look to the devil emperor, the evil infant, and Yun Qi as their examples. These are the people who wanted to save the world and actually did so to prove it. What about you? You claim to be a man of virtue and justice, but you are the one who ambushed the evil infant and sent her out of the primal chaos, the person who had just saved your life. You are the one who drove Xianxia to a dead end right after he saved the world, even going so far as to bring everyone to his homeworld and destroying everything he loved in a single day. Heh! Kai Waya chuckled again. The righteous way you believe in is nothing but a joke. Zhou Yuzi, are you truly that blind to the ugliness of your own beliefs? Do you really not understand why Long Bai Nan Wansheng and Kainai Fanshan turned against Xianxia the moment the Devil Emperor was gone? All these years you spearheaded the hunt for Xianxia all over the God realm. Are you really trying to carry out the justice you claim to believe in? Or are you just averting your eyes from the ugly darkness you never dared to touch in your heart? Shut up! Shut up! Zhou Yuzi suddenly broke his dead silence and swung his whisk at Kai Waya. However, the power that came out was unstable and chaotic. Rumble! The earth cracked under his power, but all the attack managed to do to Kai Waya was lift the hem of her skirt a little. Oh right, there's one more thing I forgot to tell you, the most important thing of it all. Kai Waya's voice grew more and more transient. Before that fateful day, Xianxia was a man who couldn't stop butting into another person's business and saving oppressed mortals who had nothing to do with him at all. Today, he became a man who could slaughter your entire realm without blinking. From a god-child messiah to a devil master who dreams of burying the entire eastern divine region in a sea of blood, who do you think is the one who drove him to change so drastically in just a few years? Zhou Yuzi started shaking from head to toe. His head in particular was shaking so violently that it was as if his neck was broken. The prophesied words that had been haunting his dreams for the past few years started ringing like a death knell from hell. Yet despite the utter chaos in his mind, Kai Waya's devilish voice continued to reach the deepest parts of his soul unhindered. Xianxia saved the eastern divine region, the eternal heaven god realm, you and your family. Now, blood is raining all across the eastern divine region, and countless pitiful souls are doomed to die without even a grave to remember them by. Your ancestors' lands are turning into bloodied rubble, and your descendants are screaming and dying a worse death than even the devil people you've slaughtered your whole lives. Who do you think is the one who created such a terrible devil? Who do you think is the one who damned his people, his homeland, and the whole eastern divine region? Bang! Zhou Yuzi's whisk sank deeper into the ground. His head was shaking even harder than before, and his eyes were shockingly white. No, no, say no more. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Say no more. No matter how his soul struggled, the devilish voice invading his soul was as clear as his nightmares. This is a sin that cannot be atoned for even if a pillar of shame is erected above your grave, and the people spat and cursed you for 1,000,000 lifetimes. Your descendants, assuming any are left when this is all over, shall bear your shame and sin for eternity. They will cower in darkness and be cursed by the living for as long as they live, never be able to lift their heads high again. When you enter the Yellow Springs, your ancestors will never forgive you either. All they will do is nail you to the most painful cross they can find in the purgatory. Shut up! Zhou Yuzi suddenly leaped into the air and tried to grab Kai Waya's neck. His profound energy was chaotic and out of control. Kai Waya didn't move a muscle, but Zhou Yuzi missed completely and hit the ground. Instead of standing up, he sank his fingers into the earth and muttered in a trembling voice, I am right, I am right. He is the devil god who will slaughter the world. He killed my son. The devil people shouldn't exist. The evil infant shouldn't exist. I did it for the people. I did it for justice. I am right, I am right, I am right. Suddenly, the black gleam in Kai Waya's eyes turned into an invisible shadow and invaded Zhou Yuzi's soul. The man himself didn't notice or react to it at all. Kai Waya's lips curled up as a cold gleam flashed across her pupils. Zhou Yuzi's soul was a lot weaker than she had imagined. Perhaps he had been tormented by something he dared not even look at since Xianxia had escaped to the northern divine region. The horrible tragedy at Eternal Heaven Realm was still being projected all over the eastern divine region. Zhou Yuzi hit the ground with his head while doing everything in his power to seal his own hearing and vision. He hated himself for not being able to knock himself out and wake up to a whole new reality. Kai Waya slowly walked toward him and extended her palm, but whatever she was going to do was cut off by 3 approaching white lights. Kai Waya turned and appeared several kilometers away in the blink of an eye. 3 guardians appeared next to Zhou Yuzi instead. Let's go, my lord, one of them shouted sorrowfully before lifting Zhou Yuzi to his feet. Then they escaped into the distance without any pause whatsoever. Kai Waya didn't chase after them. She simply watched as Zhou Yuzi was taken away by the guardians. eyes twinkling like the stars of the darkest night. An eerie smile slowly spread across her lips. "Chair," she whispered, "I told you that I would make anyone who hurts you pay 100,000 times over. Death would be too easy on him. He will live to enjoy the rest of his life." Her voice was charming, but her words were the cruelest, most devilish curse in the entire world. Meanwhile, the war at the Eternal Heaven God realm was still going. Yan 3 was attacking Honorable Tai Yu and destroying him. The latter was already injured in the first place, and his mind was blown away by everything that was happening around him. As a result, Yan 3 was able to suppress him and injure him severely in just the blink of an eye. As for Xianxia Yinger, Yan 3 had shoved her out of the fight with his aura. He was a Yama ancestor. He would have to dig himself a hole and hide inside if he cooperated with another profound practitioner to suppress a mere guardian. Xianxia Yinger put away her weapon and walked up to Yun Qi. She shot a glance at the great projection formation in the air before asking, "How are you? Are you feeling better now?" "Feeling better?" Yun Qi chuckled. "I am just withdrawing the life I granted them in the first place. They could die 1,000,000 times, and it still won't be enough to repay their debt. After all, the dead cannot come back to life, can they?" Her mother's memory flashed across her eyes, and Xianxia Yinger fell silent for a very long time. Suddenly, Yun Qi's eyes flashed when a sound transmission formation appeared in front of him. He asked, "Has the Moon God realm mobilized their troops?" "No," Hua Jin's voice came from the profound formation. "There is good news. Shui Meiyin is nowhere in the Moon God realm, meaning that she may have escaped a long time ago. Also, the Moon God realm split up their forces to search for Shui Meiyin just a while ago, so it is very unlikely that they'll be able to reconverge in a short time." "Is that so?" Yun Qi narrowed his eyes and smiled chillingly. "That is fantastic news." The projection that filled the blue sky of the Eastern Divine Region was ravaging the willpower of both the Eternal Heaven Profound practitioners, currently outside the Eternal Heaven realm, and the Eastern Divine Region Profound practitioners alike. The Eternal Heaven realm was the most well-reputed king realm in the Eastern Divine Region, but not only was it invaded and crushed by the devil people in almost no time at all, the invaders themselves were countless times stronger than they were supposed to be. In the sky, the forces of Eternal Heaven realm continued to crumble as the devil people pressed them. How could they resist a force that washed away a supposedly mighty king realm like sand when their own faith was crumbling? Did they even have the strength to resist a force this powerful? Their morale was extinguishing, and their hearts were dyed increasingly in fear and despair. Slowly but surely, more and more people started retreating and running away. Honor broke before survival instinct. When one person ran away, the rest followed. It wasn't long before the number of people who escaped or surrendered exceeded the number of people who were killed in action. The dark, profound practitioners of the Northern Divine Region all shared the same faith and beliefs. They hadn't planned to return alive the moment they stepped out of the Northern Divine Region. The Eastern Divine Region, though, had been completely spoiled by peace. They utterly lacked the fatal determination of the devil people, not to mention that it was all so sudden and terrifying. One by one, the Northern Divine Region took over the 100 or so footholds Kai Weiao had determined prior to the invasion in an insanely short amount of time. Outside the Moon God realm, a small profound arc was flying toward space. When the Eternal Heaven projection appeared in the distant sky, a girl curled up into a ball in a corner of the vessel slowly looked up before murmuring dreamily, "Young Master Yun." That's... Not far away, a middle-aged man was also staring at the projection. A while later, he made a snap decision and ordered, "Full speed ahead. We'll worry about energy efficiency later." The profound ship abruptly sped up. The girl herself had risen to her feet before she realized it. After staring at the projection for a moment, she suddenly shivered violently before running toward the edge. "Jin Yue?" But she was stopped by a tall figure. The middle-aged man asked sternly, "Where do you think you're going?" Jin Yue answered in a panicked tone, "I'm going back. Eternal Heaven God realm has already fallen, and young Master Yun hates Master deeply, so he might. Master is in danger. I need to head back immediately." "Are you crazy?" the middle-aged man yelled harshly. "The Moon God Emperor just exiled you. She even gave the order to kill you if you enter the Moon God realm again. I don't even understand why you still care about her after she treated you like this." "Don't stop me, father." Jin Yue clenched her hands tightly. "I cannot abandon my master during her time of greatest danger no matter what." She gathered her profound energy and pushed the middle-aged man away from her. She was about to take off when her father shouted, "Jin Yue, you didn't abandon her, she abandoned you. Also, who do you think the Moon God Emperor is? Do you really think your meager strength is of use to her if even she is in danger? Don't forget, you're not the only one who was exiled by her. Are you really going to risk your family's lives on the off chance that she might be feeling merciful?" His words froze Jin Yue in her tracks right before she could step out of the profound arc. "Big sis," the voice of a young girl behind her finally shattered her determination. She turned around and hugged the little girl gently, consoling her. It was also to hide the tears sliding down her own cheeks. "I'm sorry, father. I acted impulsively," she whispered before hugging the little girl tighter. The middle-aged man shook his head as pain flashed across his eyes. He knew full well how important the Moon God Emperor was to his daughter, and how much pride she took in being able to serve her as her attendant. But the Moon God Emperor was ultimately the emperor of a king realm. She didn't need to justify her cruelty and ruthlessness to anyone. Their profound ship flew quickly toward the south. They could be escaping to the southern divine region. They could also be escaping to the lower star realms even further down south. Countless eastern divine region profound ships appeared behind them not long after they left. They were escaping in every direction like headless flies. In the star god realm, or more accurately the biggest auxiliary star realm owned by the star god realm, a warship covered in starry symbols was making its way toward eternal heaven realm at top speed. The star god realm had lost their own homeworld, and their forces had dwindled to just 6 star gods and 17 divine master realm elders in the wake of the evil infant disaster. One night was all the time it took for them to drop to the bottom of the barrel. That wasn't even the worst of it. They had lost the star god emperor and the star god wheel as well. There were only 12 people on the warship: the heavenly demon star god, heavenly jade star god, heavenly flame star god, and 9 divine master realm elders. They had decided to answer the eternal heaven god emperor's plea for help, because the eternal heaven realm wasn't the only force Yun Qi held a grudge against. If the eternal heaven realm fell, it was only a matter of time before they were targeted as well. They knew that much. They were only 12, but they represented literally half of the star god realm's core forces. The other half had stayed behind just in case the devil people attacked the star realm while they were gone. The star god realm simply didn't have the strength to take another devastating blow. However, the warship hadn't flown more than 500 kilometers when a terrible spatial storm suddenly threw them off course. Unable to resist, the warship was tossed backward like a top for several breaths before they finally regained control of it. "What's going on?" All the star gods meditating inside the warship opened their eyes and flew out into the open. Then they all froze in their tracks. A small and delicate girl was blocking the way to the eternal heaven god realm. Her back was facing toward them, and dark mist that looked like it came from the depths of the abyss itself was circulating above her rainbow-colored dress. You are." There was no mistaking that familiar back, dress, and star god divine power, even if the latter was now tainted by a dark aura that belonged to a devil. "Princess Xianxia," the heavenly jade star god asked tentatively. Instead of turning around to face her, Xianxia said in an icy tone, "Turn back." "Princess Xianxia, is that really you?" the heavenly demon star god Rose asked while taking a tentative step forward. His voice sank as he stared at the terrible energy surrounding Xianxia. "Why are you—" "Watch out," Aster grabbed Rose and pulled him back. At the same time, Xianxia turned around and swung the heavenly wolf sacred sword, the heavenly wolf devil sword without mercy. Boom, a mighty but sorrowful roar resounded throughout space as the entire ship was split in half. The 50-kilometer-long warship was empowered by dozens of profound formations, but the bluish-black aura of the heavenly wolf split it as easily as a hot knife through warm butter and destroyed it completely. The 9 divine master realm elders escaped the destroyed warship before it took them down with it. 3 of them were drenched in blood. Everyone was staring at Xianxia in complete disbelief. All 3 star gods stared at Xianxia with shaking eyes. Their impression of her had completely changed in just one move. The heavenly wolf star god was the youngest star god of them all, although she was shockingly compatible with the heavenly wolf's divine power. Everyone thought that it would be at least 1,000 years before she became fully compatible with her divine power. Although that strike had only lasted for an instant, the divine pressure it gave off was clearly that of a level 10 divine master. In fact, it was as strong as Xing Jukong's power, if not stronger. It had only been 7 years since Xianxia vanished in the wake of the evil infant disaster. How in the world did she evolve from a level 8 divine master who just accepted the heavenly wolf's divine power to a peak level 10 divine master in 7 years? It was an unprecedented achievement, be it in the history of the star god realm or their common sense. Turn back! She pointed the heavenly wolf devil sword again at 3 star gods and the trembling star god elders. The weapon that should be glowing with bluish energy was now covered in a layer of darkness. The eye of the heavenly wolf at the tip of the sword especially was flashing with a violent, reddish-black light. Her power and killing intent were above all of theirs. The message was clear. She wouldn't repeat herself a third time. Tightening her grip around Rose's hand, Aster said, "Come, let's return." No one took another step forward. They all turned around and went back where they came from. Sometime later, Aster turned her head and sneaked a glance at the distant Keijai. The bright, innocent smile on her face was long gone. The endless stars that used to reside in her eyes had all winked out of existence. All that was left was a stifling darkness and devilish power that stopped even the bravest men dead in their tracks. She didn't think about how Keijai was able to grow this powerful in just 7 short years. Instead, she thought of pain and sorrow. Just whose fault was all of this? In another eastern divine region king realm, a profound ship had departed for the eternal heaven god realm at almost the same time as the star god realm's warship. Xianxia had a dark expression on his face as he stood atop the profound ship. The Brahma kings behind him were wearing gloomy faces as well. The terrible sight of the eternal heaven god realm had worried him deeply. As the god emperor of the Brahma monarch realm, there were very few people who knew the northern divine region better than him, if at all. Just the battle taking place at the eternal heaven god realm right now had shredded his preconceptions of the northern divine region. He was especially worried about the 3 old men he saw on the projection. The mere sight of their ugly eyes had sent shivers into the heart of the strongest god emperor of the eastern divine region. Not long after he left, 3 people slowly walked up to the gates of the Brahma monarch capital. Wherever they went, the world itself froze in its tracks. The leader of the group stopped in front of the gates and said, "Please tell Xianxia that the Southern Sea God Emperor is here to see him." The Brahma monarch guard bowed politely. "Greetings, Southern Sea God Emperor. The eternal heaven realm is currently under assault by the devils, and our God Emperor has just left the realm to rescue them." "Is that so?" Nan Wansheng smiled faintly. "Then I will wait for him to return. What's wrong? Are you going to try and stop me?" "Of course not." The Brahma monarch guard immediately retreated and bowed his head. "Please come in." The Southern Sea God Emperor often visited the Brahma monarch capital to see Xianxia, but even if that wasn't the case, they wouldn't dare to stop the strongest God Emperor of the Southern Divine region from doing what he wanted. The man strode into the capital like he owned the place before expanding his consciousness. He instantly identified the locations of several Brahma kings before grinning to himself and taking out a dark gold-colored disc. A small, profound formation enveloped him and his entourage, and they suddenly appeared before a tower. The tower itself looked like nothing special, but it was covered in hundreds of ceiling formations and guarded by a ridiculous number of people. The greed behind the Southern Sea God Emperor's eyes only burned even brighter. So bright, in fact, that it borderlined maniacal. He strode toward the tower. He had barely taken a few steps when a figure descended from the sky. It was a short man with a big head, big ears, and a round body. His aura was as dense as 1,000,000 mountains. It was none other than the 8th Brahma King. "Southern Sea God Emperor, Southern Hell Sea King, Western Hell Sea King." The 8th Brahma King smiled as he greeted the visitors, but his heart was really sinking like a rock. "My God Emperor would be greatly delighted to see you all had he been here. Now please follow me to the main palace for a short break. My God Emperor will be returning very soon." "Is that so?" The Southern Sea God Emperor smiled, but his eyes suddenly gleamed with killing intent. "But I can't wait any longer." The moment he said that, golden light burst out of his fingers and traveled straight toward the 8th Brahma King's throat. The 8th Brahma King had had a bad feeling immediately after the Southern Sea God Emperor appeared at this precise time with 2 of his Sea Kings. This was the capital of the Brahma monarch God realm, the most inviolable place in the entire Eastern Divine region. However, the Southern Sea God Emperor was a madman who couldn't care less about the image or the principles a God Emperor should have. He would do anything to achieve his goals. Although the 8th Brahma King was mentally prepared for anything the moment he appeared before the Southern Sea God Emperor, The fact that the latter had actually attacked him still shocked him deeply. He made a pushing motion and summoned a huge Brahma imprint immediately. It blocked Nan Wansheng's attack and fired a column of light into the sky. At the same time, it rang like 1,000 bells and awoke the entire Brahma monarch capital. Rumble, the stalemate only lasted half a breath before the 8th Brahma king was knocked away. The Brahma monarch guards rushed in quickly to check out the commotion. Above the tower, all of the ceiling profound formations became active and glowed almost as bright as the sun itself. The 8th Brahma king's expression darkened, but he still restrained himself. This one is aware that he has no right to spar with the Southern Sea God Emperor himself. If you are this eager, please wait until my God Emperor returns. I'm sure that he will be able to sate your hunger. Ha 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 ha! But Nan Wansheng wasn't even looking at him. Staring greedily at the protected tower and laughing like a madman, he said, "There is only one reason someone would install this many seals into a shabby tower. It is here. Attack! Don't hold back and kill anyone who tries to stop you." Nan Wansheng was arrogant, but never blind. He knew full well that he only had a limited amount of time to get what he wanted before the main bulk of Brahma Monarch Realm's forces showed up and stopped him. He was inside their capital after all. The Southern Hell Sea King and the Western Hell Sea King acted at once. The 8th Brahma King was no match for either of them, but he couldn't back down no matter what. He pushed out again and attacked them with a giant Brahma imprint. Clang! The Brahma imprint only lasted a breath before it was torn apart by the Sea King's terrifying power. At the same time, Nan Wansheng's shining palm punched through the debris and struck him right in the chest. The 8th Brahma King was sent skidding several kilometers across the floor. The surrounding Brahma guards were knocked away by the God Emperor's power before they could even do anything. The 8th Brahma King's face turned deathly pale for a moment. He was struck by a sense of anger and dismay. Strength was the determining factor for almost everything in the God realm. Status, honor, glory, and even the way people treated you. Back when the Brahma Monarch God realm still had the 3 Brahma gods and the Brahma Monarch goddess, they were only a tad stronger than the Southern Sea God realm. After they lost 4 level 10 divine masters in one go, 3 Brahma gods to the Devil Emperor, and the Brahma Monarch goddess to themselves. The Southern Sea God Emperor's attitude changed completely after he visited them again. Today, he even attacked them in their own capital. His arrogance and disdain for them were bared for all to see. No one could get close while the 2 Sea Kings were covering Nan Wansheng's back. The man himself had strode up to the tower like he owned the place. Every one of the ceiling formations covering the tower was incredibly powerful. Even a God Emperor wouldn't be able to break it in a short time. But the Southern Sea God Emperor hadn't come without preparations. An oddly shaped pick covered in dark, devilish energy suddenly appeared in his hand. In the distance, the rest of the Brahma kings rushing over to their brethren's aid turned pale in unison when they saw the black light in the Southern Sea God Emperor's hands. The spirit-removing devil pick! A long time ago, the worst battle of the war between the gods and devils had taken place in the Southern Divine region. Therefore, many divine inheritances, divine artifacts, devil artifacts, and devil poison could be found in that region. However, the Southern Divine region ultimately wasn't a dark environment. All devil artifacts or devil poison must be sealed completely to prevent their dark energy from leaking. That was why devil artifacts used outside an environment with dark, profound energy basically grew weaker with every usage. Of course, whether or not their owners would secretly slip into the Northern Divine region to restore the strength of their artifacts was another thing. Right now, the spirit-removing devil pick Nan Wansheng was holding was one of the strongest existing devil artifacts in the entire Southern Divine region. It had the incredibly powerful ability to remove spiritual power, meaning that it could break apart almost any profound formation and barrier that wasn't dark-based with ease. However, a devil artifact this powerful couldn't be controlled easily without a sufficient amount of dark, profound energy. Nan Wansheng was a God Emperor, but even he wasn't immune to the debilitating effects of the spirit-removing devil pick. His hand was shaking slightly, and at least half his arm was engulfed in intense pain. His gaze only grew more violent as a result, however. He swung the spirit-removing devil pick at the profound formations. Instead of retaliating with a devastating amount of power, the seals let out a shrill noise as tens of thousands of black cracks spread across their surface at once. It only took a couple of breaths' time for the profound formations to lose their light and crumble completely. Nan Wansheng's expression changed all of a sudden. The next moment, he looked up and punched out with his left arm. The terrifying ring of an explosion at least 5,000 kilometers wide broke out above the Brahma monarch capital. A rumble later, a crooked old man wearing a gray robe slowly descended from the sky and dropped in front of Nan Wansheng, blocking the southern sea god emperor's pressure with his own profound energy. It was Gu Zhu. Oh, a cold gleam passed through Nan Wansheng's long, narrow pupils. It's you! Gu Zhu was a loyal servant of Qianai Yinger. In some ways, he could be considered half her master in the way of the profound. Nan Wansheng knew all this except one thing. To this day, he still didn't know what his real name was. Even stranger than that was the fact that Gu Zhu had appeared from inside the tower. "Southern Sea God Emperor," Gu Zhu said with a voice as powerful as the sea waves. "Please leave." Behind them, 4 of the 7 Brahma kings had already shown up. The divine master elders and Brahma monarch divine envoys had shown up and surrounded the southern sea god emperor and his sea kings as well. Not only did Nan Wansheng show no signs of fear, he smiled easily at Gu Zhu and said, "Give me what I seek, and I will leave immediately." Gu Zhu didn't ask what he wanted or put on a pretense. From the moment Nan Wansheng showed up, he knew that it was pointless to deny or cover up the secret. He let out a quiet sigh and said, "The southern sea god emperor cannot have been here without good reason. The eastern divine region is under assault by devils right now, and the timing of your arrival couldn't be worse. You are a wise man, southern sea god emperor. You cannot be so blind as to miss the possibility that this is a part of the devil people's scheme, can you? Please don't allow yourself to be used and bring harm to both our realms before the true disaster strikes." "Well said, well said." The southern sea god emperor laughed before extending a hand toward Gu Zhu. "What else are you waiting for then? If you know exactly what the situation is, then you should surrender what I want to me immediately. This way, both of us can walk away with what we want." "AI?" Gu Zhu sighed deeply before stretching a wizened hand from his gray robes. "What else can this old one say if the southern sea god emperor himself doesn't mind being used? Please teach me your power." "Heh," Nan Wansheng sneered. "I'm afraid that you are not qualified." "Then what about me?" A low but furious growl suddenly resounded across the air. A gigantic profound formation suddenly lit up above the tower. Spatial lights filled the air for a time. The Brahma monarch profound ship that had left the realm not long ago suddenly reappeared in the Brahma monarch god realm again. Then Qianai Fanchen and his 7 Brahma kings dropped down from the sky and locked their auras around Nan Wansheng and the 2 sea kings. Bang! The entire capital shook a little when Qianai Fanchen hit the ground in front of the southern sea god emperor. The southern sea god emperor stared at the profound ship in the sky for a moment before he finally lowered his gaze to Qianai Fanchen. He said softly with a half-smile as his eyes narrowed into slits, "To think that a measly little tower like this would have a dimensional formation that is directly connected to your main warship. I am growing more and more interested in the contents of this tower." "Southern Sea," Qianai Fanchen asked darkly, "you would allow someone to use you like a tool?" Nan Wansheng retorted easily. "Would you, if you were in my position?" Qianai Fanchen frowned slightly. Eternal life was something that could drive any race at any level to complete insanity. Even the calmest person could lose their mind before the temptation. It was why the person who revealed the secret of this tower to Nan Wansheng wasn't afraid that their motives would be recognized at all. Anger burned inside Qianai Fanchen's heart, but he was in no position to vent as he wished. He quickly weighed the pros and cons before saying, "In that case, allow me to make a deal with you." "Oh." Nan Wansheng raised an interested eyebrow while putting away the spirit-removing devil pick. "Tell me, help me suppress the devil people attacking the eastern divine region," Qianai Fanchen said. "Once they are annihilated, I will study its secrets with you." Although the devil people's invasion from several days ago had rung a warning bell in Qianai Fanchen's mind, he hadn't paid it too much attention, much less cared enough to suppress them. After all, the Brahma monarch god realm was recuperating and doing everything in their power to cultivate a new Brahma god. There was no way they were going to reduce their own strength and wipe eternal heaven realm's ass for them. Yet today, just less than 2 hours ago, the situation had suddenly escalated beyond his wildest imagination. Star realms were collapsing everywhere in the eastern divine region, and even the eternal heaven god realm was more or less destroyed in a frighteningly short amount of time. How could he not be worried by this? "Ha ha ha ha," Nan Wansheng laughed right in Qianai Fanchen's face before ridiculing him. A deal. Study its secrets together. Heh, do you still remember your promise to me a couple of years ago, Xianxia Fanshan? You told me that you would deliver Xianxia Yinger untouched to me. I trusted you, exiled all my women, prepared a grand feast, and even invited all the kings to witness the day the lady goddess herself became my personal object. But you let her go and lied to me. You old dog. Nan Wansheng's face visibly distorted as he reiterated what happened back then. His frustration at missing the Brahma monarch goddess and his fury at being lied to by Xianxia Fanshan poured out at once. You turned me into a laughingstock in the southern divine region, and you're expecting me to believe your lies again, Xianxia Fanshan declared coldly. This is the last time I will repeat myself. She escaped of her own volition. I had nothing to do with it. Don't pretend you don't know that just because you're angry. I'm the one who gets to decide what I believe, Nan Wansheng replied just as coldly. You broke your word and humiliated me in front of my people. I will never forget just based on these two facts alone. Your Majesty, the first Brahma king took a step forward and implored angrily, you don't need to tolerate him. Even without the Brahma gods, the Brahma monarch god realm need not fear anyone. Xianxia Fanshan extended his hand and silenced his own Brahma king. Choking down his own anger, he said in a low tone, Hear this, Southern Sea. Our old grudges aside, you should have witnessed the tragedy of the eternal heaven god realm. This devilish invasion is unlike anything we've ever seen before. It's almost as if someone has modified them into a whole new race. If the eastern divine region falls, the next one to topple may very well be your divine region. Not only did Xianxia Fanshan's words succeed in changing Nan Wansheng's mind, the latter let out a low chuckle and said, Exactly. The Brahma monarch god realm may be the devil people's next target after the eternal heaven god realm falls. I can help you, he curled his lips dangerously. Or I can rob you blind while you're under attack. Your choice. His intentions were about as clear as they could get. You, Xianxia Fanshan's eyes turned as cool as a frigid hell. Heaven or hell? Nan Wansheng continued to chuckle. Surely you won't arrive at the wrong decision, Brahma monarch god emperor. As for our safety, your concern is hardly necessary, he taunted. If the eastern divine region cannot even handle the northern divine region, they may as well be wiped from the god realm, don't you think? Even if the eastern divine region truly falls to the devil people, their numbers will be drastically reduced. If they are foolish enough to attack us, then we will annihilate them where they stand. What say you? Xianxia Fanshan clenched his hands tightly. Nan Wansheng no longer had any hope of taking the primordial seal of life and death by force now that the Brahma heaven god emperor and the Brahma kings had returned, but the advantage was still all his. He smiled arrogantly. Well, we were friends for many years, so I won't force you to make a decision right away. He slowly stretched his fingers and said in a threatening voice, 7 days. I'll give you 7 days to come to a decision. Let me know when you've decided that you would rather stay in heaven or drop into hell. Oh, right, one more thing. I'm a kind-hearted person, so I'll give you 7 days to think. But whether the devil people will wait that long before attacking you is a different story. So you better make up your mind as soon as possible. Ha 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 ha. Laughing like a madman, Nan Wansheng turned around and cleared out a wide path in front of himself with a gust of wind. Then he strode out of the capital on foot instead of taking to the air. It was as if there was no one in the entire capital besides himself. The southern Hell Sea King and the western Hell Sea King also wore arrogant expressions as they followed behind their god emperor. Xianxia Fanshan never ordered his people to stop them even though they had walked out of his sight. However, blood was dripping profusely from both his hands. Xianxia Fanshan didn't say anything even when the southern sea god emperor was gone completely. The first Brahma king walked forward and asked, Your Majesty, what should we do about the eternal heaven realm? Seal our realm? Xianxia Fanshan growled. At this point, the eternal heaven realm was the last thing in his mind. Yes, Your Majesty. The Brahma kings obeyed his order, and it wasn't long before the entire Brahma monarch god realm was surrounded by a huge, formless barrier. Withdraw! Everyone knew that Xianxia Fanshan was brimming with anger, and no one dared to get close to him. They all scattered the moment he gave the order. Gu Zhu was the only one who remained by his side. Xianxia Fanshan slowly raised his palms. They were completely covered in blood, and his fingers were still clenched tightly into fists. He uttered in a voice so dark that it was terrifying, Southern Sea, you've threatened the wrong man this time. His eyes gleamed with infinite cruelty when he said this. He was the strongest god emperor of the eastern divine region. His realm might not be as strong as the Southern Sea God Emperor's right now, but he wouldn't take this humiliation lying down. "Gu Zhu," he suddenly asked, "you wiped out all of Yinger's memories regarding the primordial seal of life and death before Yun Qi implanted a slave imprint in her, didn't you?" "Yes," Gu Zhu replied, "but not all of it. The Moon God Emperor was already aware of its existence, and she is an intelligent woman. Wiping it all would only give the Moon God Emperor reason to make trouble for us. Therefore, I wiped out all of her memories regarding the primordial seal of life and death except its existence and its location. That means that Yinger is most likely the one who told him about this place," Xianxia Fanshan muttered. "Normally, it was impossible for the devil people to go all the way to the southern divine region and leak information there. Yet it was a fact that countless devil people had appeared in the southern area of the eastern divine region without anyone noticing. This meant that the impossible had become the possible, no matter how improbable it sounded. In fact, it could be the only possibility. Gu Zhu didn't say anything. Right now, his thoughts were all over the place. "Everything about the ancestor has been wiped away, correct?" Xianxia Fanshan stared Gu Zhu directly in the eye. "Yes," Gu Zhu replied calmly and without fear. "You don't need to worry about this, master." "Good." Xianxia Fanshan's eyes turned gruesome again when he stared in the direction Nan Wansheng had vanished. Realm was still ongoing. In just 2 hours' time, nearly half of the realms were drowning in blood so thick that the air itself was colored red. Despair was slowly but surely deepening across every corner of the sacred King realm. The only reason they hadn't crumbled completely was because they were still clinging to the hope that reinforcements from nearby upper star realms and the other 2 king realms would reach them in time. They couldn't possibly know that the star god realm's reinforcements had been sent slinking back into their hole by Keijai. The most powerful king realm of the eastern divine region, the Brahma monarch god realm, was ambushed by the southern sea god emperor himself after their main force took off to eternal heaven god realm. Although the fight hadn't devolved into an all-out battle, Xianxia Fanshan ultimately chose to abandon the eternal heaven realm to their fate and even seal off his entire realm. As for the moon god realm, most of their core forces were still hunting after the escaped Shui Meiyin. They couldn't even return to their own realm in time, much less rescue the eternal heaven realm. As for the powerful upper star realms, the shrouding sky realm was one of the 3 most powerful upper star realms of the eastern divine region. They hadn't been attacked by the devil people, but they were located so far away from eternal heaven god realm that the battle would have been over long before they reached it. The blue jade moon god had been keeping an eye on the glazed light realm since the escape of Shui Meiyin. They decided that they might as well stay put and do nothing. Finally, the Holy Eve's realm was shrouded by an eerie silence despite the chaos. Not one of their 3 top-tier divine masters, Luo Guxi, Luo Shangchen, or Luo Changsheng, showed their faces or responded to the cries for help at all. The rest of the upper star realms were too busy defending their own territories to do anything, especially since Zhou Zuzi had summoned most of their realm kings and core forces away from their home realms. Had they had the time to collect themselves, they would be swearing bloody murder at the eternal heaven realm for weakening them at the worst of times, much less save them. The projection from eternal heaven god realm was still active. Almost everyone from every corner of the eastern divine region could look up and see how the battle was progressing there. Everyone's morale and faith was dropping like a rock as the battle grew worse and worse. At the eternal heaven god realm, Xianxia Yinger withdrew her sound transmission profound formation before walking up to Yun Qi. She said, "As expected, Nan Wansheng invaded the Brahma monarch capital the moment the Brahma monarch profound warship left the realm." "HMPH." Yun Qi let out a low and disdainful sneer. Nan Wansheng only brought 2 people with him, probably 2 of the 4 sea kings. Clearly, he was hoping to grab what he wanted as soon as possible and escape before Xianxia Fanshan returned. Unfortunately, they chose not to duke it out. Xianxia Yinger used the word unfortunately, but her expression was devoid of surprise. It isn't a surprising outcome. Both Xianxia Fanshan and Nan Wansheng are old bastards who place their own self-interests above everything else. They wouldn't resort to costly measures unless they had no other choice. "And after that?" Yun Qi asked. The Brahma monarch god realm went into lockdown. Clearly, Xianxia Fanshan has lost his nerve after being taken by surprise like that. As for the southern sea god emperor, Xianxia Yinger let out a cold chuckle. He is still somewhere around the area. Knowing his character, he will not give up on eternal life easily. Besides that, the chaos embroiling the Eastern Divine Region right now is the perfect opportunity for him to get what he wants. If I have to guess, Nan Wansheng must have given Kai Fanshan a time limit. During this time, he will attempt every play in the book to pressure Kai Fanshan into giving him what he wants. Will Nan Wansheng lose his patience first, or will Kai Fanshan mount a desperate retaliation? I can't wait to know the outcome. The possibility that Kai Fanshan might surrender the primordial seal of life and death to Nan Wansheng never crossed her mind. It was simply impossible. What about the Star God realm? Yun-Chi asked. The situation in the Star God realm is a bit strange, Kai Yinger said. Their starship was seen taking off from their star realm, but the star gods and the elders boarding the ship soon returned without it. Yun-Chi. Our spies tracked down the starship eventually, but they discovered that it had been completely destroyed. Who did it? Yun-Chi frowned slightly. Kai Yinger replied, They didn't find the culprit, but I'm pretty sure I know who the culprit is. The starship was destroyed, but there were no signs of battle. Whoever did it had done it in half parts hatred and reluctance, and there was only one person that fit that description. Yun-Chi didn't say anything for a long time. Have you returned to the Eastern Divine Region too, Keija? Rumble the explosion could be heard throughout the entire Eastern Divine Region. The protective profound formation of the first sacred hall had finally collapsed completely under the endless bombardment. The sacred hall was constructed from divine jade, but without the protective formation, it couldn't possibly withstand the power of a divine master. Over half of the building was destroyed in the blink of an eye. The underground of the sacred hall was 50 kilometers deep. It contained everything the eternal heaven realm had accumulated over hundreds of thousands of years. If the devil people noticed and plundered it all, the eternal heaven realm would hard-press to make a comeback, to say the least. Alas, right now, they couldn't even protect their own lives, much less their physical wealth. Yan One took down yet another guardian with his ghastly claws as the sacred hall collapsed. When he perished, his eyes were dyed in despair and fear instead of the will to protect. As a guardian of the eternal heaven realm, he had of course killed many devil people who tried to escape the northern divine region over his whole life. But it was only during the last day of his life that he realized that darkness profound energy was this scary, and that a monster like Yan One still existed in this world. Despite being a level 9 divine master and a bearer of the eternal heaven divine power, there was almost nothing he could do against this monster. Yan One was the leader of the 3 Yama ancestors and the first true ancestor to inherit the Yama devil power. Besides that, he was soaked in the ancient yin energy of the bone sea of eternal darkness for over 800,000 years. Just judging by profound cultivation alone, he was the strongest god emperor there ever has been besides the dragon monarch himself. However, neither the Eastern Divine Region, the Western Divine Region, nor the Southern Divine Region were aware of this. Even the devil people of the Northern Divine Region were mostly unaware of their existence until they became Yun-Chi's loyal dogs. Yan One, Yan Two, and Yan Three had displayed unparalleled power in this absolute bloodbath. They had made sure that every living being in the Eastern Divine Region would forever engrave their faces and their hellish screams into their minds forever. By now, only 2 guardians, Honorable Tai Yu and Honorable Tai Yun, were still alive in the eternal heaven god realm. Over 60% of their elders and adjudicators had been killed in action. Honorable Tai Yu was second only to Zhou Zuzi in the entire eternal heaven realm, but even he was powerless before Yan Three. He was thrown back again and again by Yan Three's powerful swipes, and the reddish-black claw marks on his body were so numerous that it became an unbearable sight. Tai Yu's mind turned blank when the sacred hall collapsed before his eyes, and Yan Three punched him right through the heart for that lapse of concentration. Jets of blood burst out of his body as he was thrown back like a leaking blood bag. He hit the ground and skidded for a moment before coming to a stop, leaving a bloody trail where he passed through. For a time, he was too weak to even get back on his feet. A sorrowful shout kept reverberating in his mind. Where are our reinforcements? Why aren't reinforcements here yet? Is it the heavens' will for us to die? Tai Yu! Honorable Tai Yun shouted as he pounced toward Honorable Tai Yu and fired a blast of energy. That action cost him an entire row of ribs as Fen Deaki landed a palm strike to his side. Rumble, a powerful tempest threw Honorable Tai Yu far, far away into the distance. Run! Run! Yuga, Tai Yun's shout was cut off by a screech of despair. Yan Tu had moved behind him and penetrated his body with his claw. The power of the Yama Devil instantly flooded his nerves and devoured all of his remaining life force. What a great man he was. It was almost enough to bring tears to my eyes. Yan Tu said as he let out a chuckle. He withdrew his claw and turned Honorable Tai Yun's corpse into a pile of goo. Tai Yun? Honorable Tai Yu uttered in pain, but he wasted no time in leaping into the air and making a mad escape. He couldn't let Tai Yun's death go to waste. However, his mad escape only lasted a couple of breaths before he suddenly turned back. Every scrap of profound energy boiling like a furious volcano, he dashed toward Yun Qi with the most ferocious eyes he had ever worn in his life. No, I am the head of the Guardians. It is my highest duty to protect eternal heaven God realm, a responsibility that is even more important than my own life. I will not escape. His despair and his determination spurred him to his limits. He was almost at his fastest as he made his way toward Yun Qi. But neither Yun Qi nor Kaianai Yinger turned around to respond to him. It was as if they hadn't noticed the approaching danger at all. Yun Qi still didn't react when Honorable Tai Yu was just 30 meters away from him. Meanwhile, Honorable Tai Yu had gathered almost all of his remaining energy and punched out with the greatest killing intent he had ever gathered in his life. The denizens of the Eastern Divine Region and the Devil people looked up in unison. Even Zhou Zhuzi, who was being carried away on the back of his guardian, had regained a bit of clarity of mind to stare at the projection with widened eyes. Honorable Tai Yu's palm moved closer and closer toward Yun Qi's heart. But what followed afterward wasn't the destructive explosion of the eternal heaven divine power. It was a hum so low and soft that it caused an uncomfortable itch in one's heart. Yun Qi was still facing forward. He hadn't turned around or even adjusted his posture one bit. However, his right hand was bent backward and touching Honorable Tai Yu's chest. No one, not even Honorable Tai Yu himself, had seen how he moved his arm or extinguished his final power. It was as if the contact had frozen Honorable Tai Yu's time and space. The only things that weren't affected were his shrinking pupils. Buzz, a wave of energy burst out of Yun Qi's arm as the Phoenix Flame and Golden Crow Flame burned at the same time. An instant later, they had combined to form a crimson flame. A black mist rose from Yun Qi's body next. The crimson flame turned darker and darker until it turned completely pitch black. Black flames were rare, but they were hardly impossible to manifest. However, the black flames Yun Qi summoned were so pure and deep that even through the projection, the denizens of the Eastern Divine Region thought that they were witnessing a burning black hell. The battlefield suddenly turned incredibly silent. Be it the disciples of the Eternal Heaven Realm, the Devil people of the Burning Moon Realm, or the three Yama ancestors, everyone was staring at the flames as if coerced by an invisible, irresistible force. The pitch-black flames reflecting inside their pupils slowly morphed into unspeakable fear. It was as if they would bury them in infinite darkness at any moment. "Ah, Yuga! A.H.!" Honorable Tai Yu was screaming, but he was screaming more out of fear and despair than pain. The pitch-black flames slowly spread from his chest to other parts of his body. Tai Yu himself and the entire world watched as his body disappeared bit by bit. There was no blood, no ash, no sound, not even pain. He was just vanishing slowly due to the black flames. Honorable Tai Yu was grievously injured and absolutely exhausted, but he was still the strongest Eternal Heaven Guardian and a level 10 Divine Master. His body was literally the body of a god. Not even 10,000 mountains could hurt a hair on his body. Still, it was a fact that this divine body was being consumed bit by bit into nothingness. His consciousness and his vision were so clear that it was cruel. Honorable Tai Yu tried to escape Yun Qi's control, but he didn't have nearly enough strength to perform such a feat. To watch oneself disappear into nothing, it was a kind of fear and despair no one but the victim themselves could understand. Silence reigned over the Eternal Heaven God realm for a time. The denizens felt like their souls had departed their bodies in shock, and no one said a word or took a step to save Tai Yu. All they could do was shiver from head to toe, from outside to inside, as the black flames continued to eat away at his limbs, his head, everything. Not one speck of dust was left behind when the cremation was finally over. When the black flames died, Yun Qi slowly lowered his arm and placed it behind his back. He never turned around to look at his victim. It was almost as if he was just burning a fly who insisted on flying to its death. The entire Eastern Divine Region fell into deathly silence as well. Unspeakable fear was tearing away at their nerves and the very fabric of their souls. Xianxia in the final fight of the conferred god battle, a crimson flame that almost defied the natural order itself, was what he used to turn the tide to his advantage and imprint its terrifying memory into everyone's mind. The black, devilish flames he had used to burn honorable Tai Yu to nothing in just a couple of breaths were 1,000,000 times more stunning than even that. It also made them realize that 8 years ago, Yun Qi was just a divine spirit who showed great potential among his peers in the profound God convention. Back then, the words of praise the eternal heaven realm awarded Yun Qi were enough to make all of them envious. Had they been in his place, the glory would have remained in their hearts for a lifetime. But today, after Yun Qi had returned to the world, he had massacred the eternal heaven realm with the flick of the finger. The devil flame of eternal calamity was created from the heretic gods' laws of fire and the eternal calamity of darkness laws of darkness. It was a combination of the ultimate rules of both laws, a devilish flame that surpassed all existing laws of fire in the world. Back then, it took him a considerable amount of time just to summon the crimson flames. Today, he could summon the devil flame of eternal calamity, a flame far stronger than the one he used back then in no time. Had Tai Yu been at his best, Yun Qi wouldn't have been able to beat him easily. In his current state, he was incapable of threatening Yun Qi or Kaianai Yinger in the slightest. Not only did he die in a pitiful manner, he was made into an example and a stepping stone to propel the power of the devils to greater heights. Yan 3 suddenly howled and broke the silence. Master's devilish might is unparalleled in the entire primal chaos. To think that a mere guardian would dare to defile my master's scales with his filthy fingers, what a fool. Jihahaha, the mad, hellish laughter that came after extreme shock turned the entire world ice-cold and frightening. Tai Yu! Zhou Zuzi had been friends with Honorable Tai Yu for tens of thousands of years. The fact that he could do nothing but watch Honorable Tai Yu die in such a pitiful manner caused Zhou Zuzi's already grayish eyes to lose all color once more. Beside him, the 3 guardians also stopped in their tracks. With the death of Honorable Tai Yu, all the guardians in the eternal heaven god realm had died. Even if they went back at top speed, the only things they would find were ruin and rubble. My lord! They stared at the eternal heaven god emperor with the darkest and most despairing expressions they ever made in their lives. Since when were the devil people of the northern divine region this terrifying? Why were these devil people completely different from the devil people they had fought until now? How did Yun Qi grow so powerful in such a short amount of time? Just a couple of years ago, he could do nothing but escape when they hunted him all over the place. Today, even their strongest guardian had died without leaving a speck of dust behind. Was it the end? Was it the end of eternal heaven? To the north of the eastern divine region in the Snow Song realm, the northern realms were among the earliest to be invaded by the devil people. In fact, most of them were embroiled in chaos right now. The only world that was still peaceful was the Snow Song realm. Every member of the Ice Phoenix divine sect was currently staring at the projection, watching that familiar yet unfamiliar figure in the sky. Was he really senior brother Yun in the Ice Phoenix divine sect? How did he become this powerful and scary? A young Ice Phoenix female disciple said with a trembling voice. Beside her, Mu Feixu shot her a glance before whispering, "Is he really that scary? Shouldn't we be more afraid of the people who drove him to this state?" After that, she turned around and vanished into the background of ice and snow. All the Ice Phoenix disciples who heard her turned their heads and stared in the direction she had vanished for a very long time. To their knowledge, Mu Feixu was such an asocial person that she could stay silent for half or even an entire year. On the other side, Mu Bingyun slowly closed her eyes and sighed. "How would you face him if you were here, sister?" Suddenly, the ice phoenix-shaped jade on her chest flashed blue as an urgent voice reached her. "Sect Master, the denizens of the surrounding star realms are starting to realize that the devil people aren't invading the Snow Song realm. Countless foreign profound practitioners and foreign profound ships are surging into our realm. In fact, riots have already broken out at our borders." "Understood," Mu Bingyun replied indifferently. She had expected this since the beginning. Ruwu Yumbel. Suddenly, the entire eternal heaven god realm started rumbling. The dark clouds covering the sky cleared away in an instant, and an ancient, mighty presence emerged from above. The unusual aura and shaking paused the terrible massacre happening all over eternal heaven god realm, and attracted the eyeballs of countless eastern divine region denizens again. Both Yun Qi and Kaina Yinger's eyes sharpened with focus. The tallest tower of the entire God realm, the 150,000-meter-long Eternal Heaven Tower, was shaking. As the mighty presence approached swiftly from the distance, it sat in everyone's hearts and souls like a physical object that demanded all those affected by it to kneel on the ground and worship it. A pair of pupils slowly opened across the blood-stained sky. They looked like a pair of human eyes, except that they were radiating a peaceful and holy light. Wherever they looked, the holy light wiped away the violence, killing intent and fear in everyone's heart. Outside the Eternal Heaven God realm, Zhou Yuzi slowly stood up with tears running down his cheeks. He raised his arms into the air and cried out sorrowfully, "Ancestor!" Thump. Inside the blood-stained grounds of the Eternal Heaven God realm, the disciples of Eternal Heaven dropped to their knees when they saw the great ancestor. They wanted to shout, but the only sounds that came out of their throats were sobs. Their last hope had finally appeared, but they couldn't feel even a shred of joy at all. Their eyes were full of blood and corpses, and their hearts despair. "Stop, Yun Qi!" A transient voice came from above. It was the voice of an old woman, and it sounded as ancient and vast as a mantra from time immemorial. The moment the voice reached the eras, every soul in the Eastern divine region felt like they were being cleansed of impurities and evil emotions. They subconsciously looked at the sky, wanting to hear more from the extraordinary voice. She was the Eternal Heaven Pearl Spirit. Everyone in the world knew of its existence. It was the only heavenly profound treasure that openly existed in the world. It was also recognized as the closest being to a divine being in the entire primal chaos. Yet, to the knowledge of the world, including most Eternal Heaven disciples, this was the first time it appeared in public. The Eternal Heaven Pearl Spirit's divine voice was transcendent and all-encompassing. In that moment, the denizens of the Eastern divine region felt like they had witnessed the descent of an ancient true God. They couldn't remove the sense of smallness, the feeling of humility, or the impulse to drop to their knees as they stared at it. Yun Qi was raising his head as well, but he didn't turn his body to face the divine spirit directly. There wasn't even a shred of respect or fear on his face. When he opened his mouth, a cold, ridiculing voice escaped his lips. "You are just the Eternal Heaven Pearl Spirit, and you dare look down on me from above, the Devil Master. Get down from there." Everyone in the Eastern divine region was stunned. Who would have thought that Yun Qi would dare speak with such vitriol and rudeness even when he was facing a divine spirit? Zhou Yuzi was so angry that he nearly fainted again. The divine eyes in the sky narrowed slightly. It looked like it wasn't expecting Yun Qi to act so arrogantly even after it had appeared. Yun Qi grinned darkly, and before golden flames burned around his body. A golden sun suddenly appeared in the sky. It was followed by a second, a third. He only stopped when 9 glaring suns had appeared in the sky. It was the 9 suns, Heaven Fury. The denizens of the Eternal Heaven realm felt like they had descended into a fiery hell all of a sudden. The earth started to turn black, and they could smell the pungent scent of their own burning flesh. If just the heat radiation alone was this bad, it was unimaginable what would happen if he dropped it on the Eternal Heaven God realm. "Get down," Yun Qi ordered again. The divine eyes let out a quiet sigh and closed slowly. Then a transient shadow appeared on the ground. Yun Qi made a clawing motion and dispelled his 9 suns' Heaven Fury. At the same time, he finally turned around to look at the divine spirit. The shadow looked so translucent that it might dissipate at the blowing of a wind, but he could still make out the outline of an old woman. The shadow had a special divine aura. Although it was incredibly faint and impure compared to He Ling's, it still made her a special existence that stood above most living beings. "Heh," Yun Qi chuckled. "You finally came out. And here I thought you were going to hide in your tortoise shell until the end. Tusk." The Eternal Heaven Pearl Spirit had never been humiliated like this, but she didn't display any anger toward it. She said, "Yun Qi, aren't you afraid that the heavenly law will punish you for your sins?" The fucking heavenly law again. Yun Qi's smile was dark and cold. He actually started walking toward the imposing Eternal Heaven Pearl Spirit. "Heavenly law, you say? What the hell is that? And who do you think you are? Where were you in the heavenly law when the Crimson Disaster struck and the Devil Emperor returned? Where were you in the heavenly law when I saved the entire world? Where were you in the heavenly law when I was abandoned by the people I saved, when my home and family fell into ruins?" Every word Yun Qi said was chilling and soul-gutting. "You didn't show up when the calamity struck. You didn't say a word when Eternal Heaven took the lead to conceal my achievements and did everything in their power to stop me. Now you come out to speak to me of the heavenly law. H-A-H-A-H-A-H-A? Yun Qi laughed like a mad devil. Not only did he feel no respect toward this divine spirit whatsoever, all he had to offer was scorn and disdain. I ask you again, who the hell do you think you are? What gives you the right to lecture me? The eternal heaven pearl spirit couldn't say anything. That's right. She had no idea how to refute that at all. Meanwhile, every profound practitioner in the eastern divine region was exchanging confused glances with each other. What devil emperor? Who saved the world? What on earth was this devil talking about?